the war problems of the intriguing problems and all that. We all have a responsibility to find a truth something like this. And if people have to take responsibility for looking into what truth is, we put together the means for people to do that. Now people have to take initiative. And we need all the help we can get. I would ask people to help us network this through anyone and any institution that can help. The reason this is so critical is that we've reached a point in our civilization where for us to go forward as a people, we're going to have to end this time that we'll be. And we're going to have to allow this information and these technologies to get out and begin fixing these large problems. And what we should use our history years in the stars. That's a hope that I have, that generations yet to come will travel from this. And will become a part of that community. That's a dream that I don't live to see, but it's a dream I hold dear. And we'll make it. And we will survive in this nation. Because I think we've got some, I don't want to say we got some good friends in that space. National Geographic Survey, 77% of all Americans believe there are signs that aliens have visited Earth. But despite this consensus, our government has yet to acknowledge what many believe to be the truth behind extraterrestrials. Is disclosure just around the corner, as some believe, or has the UFO phenomenon always been a fabrication of the human mind? The evidence has been mounting that our government is indeed no more than they are telling. In recent years, a growing number of credible scientists and investigative researchers have been lobbying for the truth to be told. One of these advocates is Stanton Friedman, a top nuclear physicist who has worked for GM, GE, Westinghouse, Aerojet General Nucleonics, and McDonnell Douglas Aircraft. Friedman has published more than 90 UFO papers and has appeared in countless documentaries and hundreds of radio and TV programs, including Larry King. What it really does have to be able to reverse. We will lose a bit of us because several more cases. Supposedly off the constant court. The data is there. Hotel Bollinger shows it, and the NSA and CIA documents. You can't deny the reality. Jim Martin is the author of Alien Agenda, the top-selling non-fiction UFO book in the world. Martin began teaching a course on UFOs at the University of Texas at Arlington in 2000, and has since appeared on ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, C-SPAN, as well as Discovery, Learning, and History channels. Today, all you have to do is look at UFOs and look at them. You can't take a picture and lose money or that's like this. So they're really the question now is what is the ending of the Stephen Bassett has been fiercely advocating the end of the 68-year government-imposed truth embargo regarding the ET presence An executive of Paradigm Associates, thus is the executive producer of the X Conference, the Citizen Hearing on Disclosure, and the Congressional Hearing Initiative.
Our leaders have the potential for a massive renaissance in science and political reform, and none of that can happen because the governments of the world will not yet even acknowledge the existence of ET.
Kathleen Martin is known around the world for her work as an alien abduction ET contact researcher, author, and lecturer. She is recognized as the world's leading expert on the Betty and Barney Hill abduction case, and is the recipient of MUFON's 2012 Ufologist of the Year Award.
My research and the evidence of the scientific evaluation of that evidence has convinced me that this case is real and that it is being covered up by the government and by a small group of debunkers who want to make Betty and Barney look like truth.
Ron James is a prolific filmmaker and writer. He is author of the book Messiah Awakenings and has won many awards, including the EPE Award for ET-related films 4 times.
There are a lot of great throughout the universe, and that there's very, very many of them that are so far advanced beyond us that we probably can't even comprehend their technology or what they're capable of. And how we play into that, we don't.
Patrick Greer is one of the most devoted crop circle filmmaker researchers today, having produced 6 documentary films that have received prestigious awards for real estate, bringing metaphysics, ET technologies, and science together to offer a clear understanding of this astounding phenomenon.
This is the most important story ever told, how real this is on the planet, and the fact that all these people being located are being taken unprotected. That's all paradise. And all the money now is behind making sure that this information doesn't get out.
I'm not expecting there will be full disclosure. There are plenty of reasons for the government not to disclose the information. Because if they learn any technological stuff, why should the U.S. put on the table for Russian Chinese don't put on the table for things?
If you're working on both of the people, and hold a big press conference and say, okay, here's the truth about the UFO. You're going to be working a long time, okay? Because these government officials have been split to that and doing that they lack for 70 or 80 years.
That's the story. Now, once that happens, I anticipate a year or two of intense engagement with everyone. And after that year or two, I think the planning will be collectively ready. Not close, but have an open concept. I have a feeling open concept as well. We this year in New York spent $1 trillion on things no issue. $1 trillion. Well, thousands of children die every single day. Nationalism is the only game in town.
There's too much, water under the bridge. A very long-winded process politically, and I do believe that it serves a very, very important purpose. And that purpose is to be professional.
If you're doing this work with clarity, you're going to bring a lot of truth to the public. The race of the gray is what I specialize in. Are telling individuals that there is not going to be disclosure by them immediately.
In fact, I think we're undergoing a conditioning process right now. We're losing people, losing parents, sightings, abductions, and hospitals, it's all around us, and more people begin to understand that it's a serious issue.
There is a program in the world so that we will be able to communicate with them, and they'll be able to communicate with us.
I believe there's some planning that is done before, and they have to help them drive the process. If they want to go to disclosure, open contact psychological, religious, ecological, etc. aspects of that.
Full disclosure is only gonna come from them, okay? And think about it, all our business is over over the city. And long enough for the news crews to get out and take footage, and then he hangs up.
Over time, and I think that we will evolve to the point where we can establish communication, but if at some point in the future, it is not going to happen immediately, according to the reports that I've received.
Knowledge, truth, and kindness is universal to peace is a revolutionary act.
Look, the situation, as you know, is this. Your next special president has probably been engaged in this for a very long time.
Well, I think, yeah, when you consider the universe is billions of years old, and I think even the Earth is somewhere like 4 billion years old, it's pretty hard to believe that us who have recorded history of like 4,000 years are the beginning of becoming the life of the planet. There's a lot of evidence on the planet that indicates that very advanced civilization is coming on.
Because you can look at these places and see that it was too perfect for us to do with the tools and technology that we had at the time. Therefore, what was the other element that gave us the ability to create these wonderful things if it wasn't some sort of intervention?
There was really a lot of companies information, and I think that's beyond dispute today. When I was a kid, they said, well, it's just hallucinations or some kind of mass psychosis. Of course, today, all you have to do is Google UFO and look at the news, and you can't take a picture on the news page.
There's an absolute fact. That's an absolute fact. That's theory. That's speculation. It's an absolute fact. Just because the government says, no, it's not, well, that doesn't change that. It's not any of the government these days. It's foolish. And the government has done about this. That's an absolute fact.
There were concerns about the malevolence of certain human groups, and they are attempting to interfere or intervene in our evolution at this point in order to bring us to a point where we don't destroy it because they're afraid that we might do it.
I think they go for their purposes. One of them was probably quarantine us. Look, the poor animals, you want us out there? Military budget $1 trillion this year. And World War II, we killed 15 million people. We destroyed 1,700 cities.
And I think their agenda is to observe and try to help fix the human evolution, up the evolutionary ladder, in a covert manner, so that we will hurry up and become part of an intergalactic community, instead of wiping ourselves out with some nuclear weapons. Intelligence is one of the 139 great systems that comprise years of our lives. You are to have always been the watchdog and the achievement of this.
On the other hand, let's not act as if we're your equals. I don't talk to squirrels in my backyard. I might say, snack once in a while. So we're not equals. People say, well, we're not on the White House lawn. The President of the United States does not speak for 7 billion people. That's pretty darn clear. If the universe is at least 13 billion years old, we have a young star. There were stars like ours and planets like ours, millions of years where our star existed. So if life developed on Open, which it does, there is a mind that going back to the so the idea that engage other planets and exploring the galaxy makes total sense. And so we very well have had extraterrestrial engagement going back as far as you want to know, even before this planet had a biosphere, maybe.
I think that they don't want us to kill ourselves because if we do, we're going to destroy this beautiful planet as well. They use this planet too.
We have exploded 2,000 nuclear vortex on this planet, only 200 people went through it. We're not nice guys.
There seems to be a lot of circumstantial evidence that they have been here for thousands of years, but they still step up their purpose. I don't know if they've done this in the past,
nice guy, and yet he's kind of died. And there's no question that the truth about Flying Saucers has been covered up. If you look at 156 NSA Umbra UFO documents, you can read one sentence per page. That's covered. I've got a bunch of CIA top secret Umbra UFO documents. They're all blacked out except for a couple of words. That's a couple.
No longer about UFOs, it hasn't been for a long time. It's an acronym, it's an anachronistic non sequitur. It's a government-sponsored propaganda acronym. It doesn't apply at all. It's about extraterrestrial craft and extraterrestrial.
I'm not sure our government is in a position to negotiate policy with any of these species. I'm pretty sure that if there's been some sort of interaction, it hasn't been a negotiation, it's been more like, this is how it is, and you're just gonna have to deal with it.
We have the facts that were enunciated by Air Force General Harold Bolin, who was asked what can you do about private school like that in Colorado, so essentially the only UFO group and not only which resulted in enclosure of private people. He said reports of UFOs that affect national security are not part of the Blue Book system, which is a federal statement. 2 paragraphs later, he said, if we close Blue Book, the public won't have a place to report UFO sightings. However, as previously noted, reports that affect national security will continue to be investigated using procedures designed for that purpose. So I located General Bolin as senior deputy memo. Document suggests that somebody is talking about 2 separate communication channels. The important ones, the government-related ones, and we just had a case of it going, it's also going on the underwear assassination, by definition, that's a national security problem. Or routine component, and I got it in the drive-ins, fly over them, big deal. They agree with that. 2 separate systems. And I'm interested primarily on the different national security.
So that's 50, and there is a 50% plus consensus. It's time to reveal this. But the military industrial complex is not a democracy. It is not a vote. It is a much more complex.
Because we need to understand that the only people with all these things are women. I mean, I don't have my own radar system, for goodness sakes, the government does. Radar systems, gun cameras, other communication on board aircraft, fly satellites, all this kind of stuff. That's what the whole boring concept was. That's not a conspiracy notion, it's a reality.
After that, it was vast list of social speculation theories that have very degrees of probability there. But we cannot assess that, or parse that, organize that, study that, because the government say there is nothing to say.
Well, there's a big explanation for Roswell, frankly. Stories about body count. So we're talking about systems all over the place. There's 2 major problems with that. None of them were dropped until 6 years after Roswell. And they were the same size and weight as pilots, by definition, the current trajectory. 6 feet tall, 175 pounds. They had to do it. And in Air Force theater clothing, because that effectively drags and beating, and they drop them out of the airplane. So they got away with it. You could not say our times. They wanted the real problem, which was a failure of the press to do this job. So how do we Watergate and their active analysis people?
And interstellar race to destroy the planet without really a lot of evidence. We are like any of our children to them in terms of our ability to cope.
What if there's way more than 50? What if there is a series of different alien races that all have a different agenda? And what if we really have no control over what our outcome is going to be? We know that there could be hostile out there who have malevolent intentions toward us and toward our planet. We need our planet
One of the blockbusters and one of independent films have long capitalized on the public's interest in the UFO phenomenon. Richard Lowry's film utilizes actual case studies and depicts a looming alien invasion. His earlier film, Destination Mars, is a parody of the 1950s flying saucer movies, but subversively conveys the message that mankind's quest for destructive weaponry could result in our own annihilation. assassination by the alien race. The final speech from the alien leader proclaims this very clear warning.
I have spent these things for many years, from the evolutionary stages to this their final hour, and it is this game knowledge that enables all of us planetary civilization to prosper for nothing indomitable mind, full, thought, feeling, rather than vision, impulse. There's only a matter of time that someone accident is right. But when the foolish person did not survive the outside control of their world, from their flood, fire, their earthquakes, and even to their solar eclipse.
The elderly subject in Mallory's documentary, The Wilkes-Barre Incident, also sends the warning that aliens have been coexisting with us for decades, and the small town in Texas where he and his comrades constructed a device that could detect who was human and who wasn't, was erased from existence.
Well, I think if you ever had to, and cover up the existence of the town, and cover up all of those deaths. And so therefore, they came in, and they went over those days, like that, other.
When the documentarians traveled to Texas and located a man's secret underground workstation, they are suddenly pursued by men in black, leading the subject's on-screen assassination by a sniper.
The number one thing is to protect us from, I would say, outliers, those that would be in alliance with those entities and civilizations which have intentions of warring us now. It may very well be a reason why the fact is the other way right now. What protects a small country in this world right now from being invaded by a larger country? Alliances between that smaller country and a more powerful country. They don't want to see that kind of behavior.
I believe they're here. I think they're among us somewhere, and I think they're scouts. See, I don't think they're here to invade America or invade the world yet. They're scouting us right now. And someday, when they finally do it, they're coming here in droves. I mean, millions are going to come here and they're taking over. What are your reasons for coming here? Understand. We've been on the so get out of the way, right?
Because no one is there.
Why?
Your position will show different from the tactical advantage.
Well, even though the river is inconsequential, that it shows we have a right to exist only if we allow it.
And we don't.
There is a mineral that says that there's like a reptilian species out there that has been genetically engineered, and that their end is not really something that's going to be close to what we like to see out.
The innate threats and other threats that can occur, and we do not have protection from other threats that can even they don't put that kind of stuff out early days in order to persuade people to avoid the issue. I mean, maybe it's true, if everybody goes insane, so it's no problem. We could have had the DT announcement in 1947. We just went through a world war with 40 million people killed. We had incremental disease. We did unbelievable sacrifice. And so we're going to fall apart because we learned that the rescue in the world in 1947.
There's a lot of people who are opinion that why the government will not disclose. But there are several things that resonate with me, and again, it's just my opinion. And I think that the first one is that even though we say we're ready in society, I really don't think we are.
The truth is not
gate, but you're sort of not used to the upload syndrome, if you will. And if they landed on this planet today, we might try to be friends with them. You know what I mean? Well, I think that's probably what would happen. I don't think anybody would have the science, the Stephenville, wow, all of this is an issue. The same thing we did with a showing crab that we found down in the Amazon basin. Instead of rushing in with clothes and Bibles and that is close to me, they closed off the area and kind of quarantined it, not to keep them in, but to keep others out. And then came a man followed just slowly allowed themselves to be seen and came up the hillside and then they're seen across the area. And then slowly activated these people to the idea that they were there and they weren't something you didn't need to. And they're making their next contact. That's the same activation process we're going right now.
So it wasn't completely ignored. It was another thing for several months after it happened. Well, what they did was lie. They switched, bait switched. They changed the time, and they're talking about the airplane, North airplane dropping flares. It's in the wrong part of the sky. That doesn't say a lot of witnesses. And I was at the wrong time. But they got away with it because the press is doing, even though they been around for thousands and thousands of years, it's very resilient. And I got the thinking that the president was to show that significantly reduced religious driven to this planet. It's not for us to expand our thinking, expand our understanding.
There's patents for television equipment that were put together years and years and years ago. Giant boring machines capable of just going through anything for huge amounts of miles in very short periods of time. And those patents were formed, and then these machines supposedly never made it into production. But we know that the possibility exists. It was very secret basis, otherwise known as no. These underground military bases. They're there. And I've seen the specs and the pictures of the giant boring machines that they have just cut right through the rock, reduces the trouble speeding up the drive, makes it weird. And so, these bases exist. Now, what exactly they can use for, if they'll ever be used, that's another question.
First, I was speaking about only one aspect. The fact is that there was a number of crafts that didn't hand to the U.S. government for decades, being extensively studied with billions of dollars, primarily in underground facilities, where they're trying to re-engineer and achieve weapons. And I went to this place called Morehousing, which was a vast underground base where they still had some of the two engines, and the Russians would just put some rocks in there and electric. You could see the technology from Patagonia and the V2, the V3, the V4, and I believe that technology moved so fast, I almost believe there might have been some help from some other people from out of our world.
There's a lot of talk about mixed human alien partnerships working with some of these underground bases, such as the one that was reported in the Gulf of Mexico. That is my hope. Okay. I've heard enough to suggest that there may be something to all that, and yet I've not seen part of that evidence. Yes, that is.
That's one of those areas in which I'm 100% certain. We have a lot of evidence and a lot of first-hand, second-hand testimony in five underground facilities. But we know that they built underground facilities as part of the Cold War.
Actually broke up the Gulf of Mexico. That was the south of there. So we started driving up toward the first day of Mesa, which is where the base is. We were in college. And we always were a little bit unsettled. We were concerned that we had something that we did solve. So we actually
The question is, do we have underground facilities devoted to the actual critical question? And there is evidence for that. The issue of the relationship between extraterrestrials and technology, terrestrial technology, is very interesting concept. It became a significant matter of the things about force, 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 for groundbreaking deals and sequestering that technology, it is criminal. The availability of that technology transforms life, save hundreds of millions of lives, and solve a great deal of our most difficult problems. And so every day that the truth embargo continues and that technology is sequestered, people are dying because of it. So in their attitude, it's one thing to people are going to die, but it's still another 20 years to see. Well, some of the people that are suffering, and too much now, it's too much out in the open. So now the flood is on their hands. We are paying a fortune for energy. People are dying because they can't afford water, food. We're polluting the environment, killing people with cancer. And they are sitting on transformative energy that might be 1 cent on the dollar. Plus, we have evidence that we have diversity and we have our own software.
If we get better understanding of the nature of reality, I believe that what today has no scientific explanation at all is going to be accepted as scientific norm in the future. And when that happens, it's going to change the face of civilization on every level.
So for decades, we have had anchorage propulsion, but it's not known or available to the public because to do so would result in embargo, and therefore it must be requested. The most important question of all regarding the EV technology is have we mastered and even reverse engineered the energy system that drives those trends? We're pretty sure it's not oil, gas, and coal. In fact, our own physics points to the likelihood that they have finally figured out how to tap into ground state field. If they have done that, it is a paradigm shift of such magnitude that only be possible to describe. What if they cure the cancer? What if they help us clean away pollution and help these children with respiratory problems and water problems and help us make this the paradigms that we had going back to this planet?
You can use that practice to universities and technology. I believe we have a technology right now far beyond what Congress even knows about.
Now it's an interesting point. Given that we have the ability, with a device smaller than a laptop, to store the entire library of copies, every book, and more. The idea that the president may have storage ability to have an enormous archive of archives in this case, we might have the opportunity to own the time to directly research our ancient history, physical, especially.
Look at all the historical events that we don't have eyewitness testimony from, whether it's Moses, in the Red Sea or whatever. So there are all kinds of possibilities.
I'm Kathleen Martin, Betty Martin Field, and my aunt Hilda. They are the first Americans whose stories are published about the UFO abduction that occurred in 1961. Betty and Barney stated that they felt that the ETs wanted to know the difference between their bodies and human bodies. They were very interested in Betty's and Barney's skeletal structure, in their nervous system. They took skin samples, they examined their hands, their feet, their eyes, their ears, their mouths. They were very different than this particular race of graves, the Betty and Barney. They also, I'm convinced, had an agenda, and that was the hybrid agenda. They took Ola from my Aunt Betty when they inserted a needle into her navel and told her it was part of the pregnancy test, and they took sperm from my Aunt Barney. This experience is not only hearsay. I'm a researcher, and what is actually meant to be vegetarian? It's not big of flexible vegetarian. So
India is one of those countries where there's something stunning no matter where you look. It's filled with culture, brimming with different foods, communities, and everything in between. The culture in this country is like no other place. And every day, more and more people are discovering what a great history India brings to the world.
A lady says up to a neighbor.
But in a place where there's always something to learn, there are also a few bizarre discoveries that come about every day. You never quite know what you're going to get. But today, we're going to tell you about what some other people have found, or will be covering 15 mysterious discoveries found in India. Number 15, village with no doors. We've all done it in the past, leaving our doors open during the day, especially if you're living in a nice neighborhood where you can trust your neighbors. It's not uncommon to have that perspective from time to time. That's probably a good environment to live in. But what if we told you in one town there are no doors at all? Forget about locking them. You don't even have to close the door because there isn't one. A town called Shiny Singapore. That's exactly what happens. There are no doors to speak of. And even without that little bit of protection, the town still attracts about 40,000 people every day. And it's not just because of the doors, it's because of the 300-year-old legend. And they didn't just get rid of doors for the heck of it. They do it because of the story of Shiny Singapore in India's Maharashtra state. This is where the villagers show their piety to Lord Shiny. This Lord is the god of Saturn, and he's considered the guardian of the village. The legend dates back to 300 years when a giant flood hit the town. The Lord of Saturn had then appeared in the dreams of the villagers. It was revealed that a rock that had washed up on shore was his idol. He ordered that the town should keep the rock, and it would help protect the villagers for eternity. He would also reside inside of it, and the villagers believe in this Lord with their entire hearts. They don't even ask anyone to watch their house when they go on vacation. What do you think? Would you take the door off out of faith? Now, let's get ready for today's discussion. It's a relic like no other. At first glance, it looks like something out of a Marvel movie, covered in green dust, which some say is rust, and gold colored with designs that look like snakes all around it. This sphere is nothing less than mysterious. It was found in India, but the exact location is unknown. There's only ever been one photo taken of it, and this is because the Lord says that every camera trying to take a photo of it has broken. It was in the hands of researchers for a good while, but they couldn't decipher the meaning or purpose of the relic. Since then, the researchers have stopped trying to figure things out when it comes to this item because now they believe there might be a curse associated with trying to figure it out. Today, the exact location of the sphere is unknown, but we have a feeling it'll turn up again one day. Where do you think this sphere has gone? And what do you think the backstory to it is? Leave your comments below with the hashtag #OpenDiscussion to let your voice be heard. You want to know a little secret? If you smash the like button, subscribe, and on the notification bell, you'll have some more knowledge for the rest of your life. So what are you waiting for? Number 14, the Foam Lake. When you walk past Bellinger Lake, you might think that someone was taking a giant bubble bath. Everywhere you look, there's froth and foam. But the truth about that is that it's just not a bubble bath soap. It's toxic. Now, that isn't an uncommon occurrence in places like Bengaluru. A lot of their lakes foam up. It's just that in this one specifically, it's a lot more than usual. It's an alarming amount. This happens usually during the pre-monsoon and monsoon season. During this time, there are heavy rains and winds. This foam sometimes even overflows onto the roads and it causes some traffic. So how is it toxic? Some people have said that it causes skin irritation. That's because the chemicals that are in it are toxic. Not only is this a problem for the town in terms of traffic jams, it's problems with visibility, but also a public health threat. This pretty much happens because of the sewage system and the way the town is getting rid of chemical detergents and other things they use daily. So it's not a natural phenomenon. Here's hoping that this town gets their act together and figures out how to rid themselves of this foam. We just hope that no one tries to take it with it. Number 13, blue dogs. Sometimes the most beautiful and head-scratching sights can have the most sinister backstory. Just imagine seeing some beautiful blue dogs walking through your town. It looks like a scene out of Wizard of Oz or Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. You'd be amazed just to see their blueberry-colored skin. Well, this is the case out in Mumbai, where 11 dogs were seen colored blue while walking down the street. Don't think for a second that it's chalked up to magic or some sort of natural phenomenon, because residents of the town are saying it is all because of a manufacturing company that's been accused of dumping untreated industrial waste and dyes into a local river. This caused the dogs to turn blue. This footage right here shows some of the dogs roaming the streets with bright blue fur. But don't worry, the factory, which had been accused of dumping the waste, has been shut down by Mumbai authorities. It's a shame that these dogs had to change color due to the waste. But at least with a planned shutdown, there won't be any more blue dogs roaming the streets. On the bright side, the dogs weren't pretty to look at. Number 12, Graveyard Restaurant. How much grabbing a bite to eat and visiting your deceased loved one sound? Usually eating at a restaurant and being above a cemetery isn't the norm. But in Ahmedabad, India, it sure is. It's the restaurant that's built above a burial ground, and it's proud of it. The name of it is the New Lucky Restaurant, and it has an awesome menu of food, plenty of seating, and of course exposed gravestones. So here's the deal as to why this place is built on top of a burial ground. The owner is faced with a short dilemma. The land had been open for taking, but it also had a burial ground. So he decided to capitalize on it, and instead of ruining a precious site, the owner built his restaurant around it. And he made the burial plots the main event. The menu came first, but still, you know why people showed up at the restaurant. There's a novelty to sitting around dead people. It's not a place that you'll find anywhere else, and you might have a hard time wrapping your head around it, but people do go and have a great time. Now, you don't want to make it sound like they're not respecting the thing. It's all about respect. The owner even erected steel bars around the ring so that no one will trade under the seat. So there's a level of respect there that keeps the place classy. Number 11, Blue City. Remember the blue dogs on our list? We think we found a nice home for them because this entire city is blue. That's right, when you look out above it, it'll look like a mini pixelated ocean. It comes right out of the Thar Desert in India. And
Hey there, I want some friends.
Come in.
no way at the supermarket, you.
Oh, hi.
Me time.
Oh,
No wasted food.
you're welcome.
Pre-portioned ingredients.
Right, it's good.
Save cash.
Look at you.
Easy four-step recipes. Squeaky shopping trolley wheel.
Right.
Happy kids.
Yes, come sit down.
Delivered to your door.
Oh, hi.
Illustrated by specialized by quality and rushing in with a store.
No,
Unexpected item in the bagging area.
no,
Please wait for assistance. Are you using your own bag?
no,
Not being able to find what you need.
absolutely not.
Forgive me, because I'm going to check out and having to that last minute awkward bolt to the supermarket to grab that said item.
Not in here. Enjoy all the benefits of every place. Delivered conveniently to your door. Pre-portioned meal kits. 4 simple, easy recipes to follow. Super easy. The whole family can enjoy. I want to see you in the supermarket. Check out every plate recipes now with discount for only $2.39 per box.
And it's painted blue mostly because of the fact that blue has been an indicator of social class. And it still holds up today because when you look at it, it's pretty mesmerizing. It can even be soothing to the eyes. What else to define these colors of the houses? They're all painted in almost baby blue paint, matching the sky. Back in the day, the blue pigment meant that a priest lived somewhere nearby, but since then, the blue coloring has taken on a life of its own. And the people of the city now look at the coloring as their identity. It represents who they are as people in the town. We call it a town pride. And it's helped to attract a lot of tourists over the years. It's not only just filled with the color blue, there are plenty of mausoleums, gardens, and lakes, and it has a history of over 500 years. It's a cool city to check out, but don't expect there to be any smurfs. Number 10, ancient step well. We've all heard of the traditional wishing well, but now what about a step well? It's exactly what you think it is. It's a combination of winding steps down into a good area that's filled with water. It's a pretty mesmerizing sight. There's one in Chan Valley, India that takes the cake in beauty. It also happens to be one of the largest step wells in the world. Not only is it the largest, but people quote it as the most beautiful. You have to work to go see it because it's not easy to find. It was built in the 8th and 19th centuries and has around 3,500 narrow steps, which are arranged in perfect symmetry. You then can descend 20 meters to the bottom of the well. These step wells were built centuries ago to help provide water year-round. The measurements of this specific one are about 64 feet deep. 13 floors were built in the 9th century for water harvesting. It has a very precise geometrical pattern. You wouldn't be able to find something like this today. The steps even form a somewhat magical maze and play off lights and shadows to give it the captivating look you see. If there's anything that's true about it, it's that it's a beautiful sight to behold. It also kind of makes us thirsty. Number 9. Pillars that never rests. One thing that's always common with landmarks and statues is that they weather over time. From the Statue of Liberty all the way down to the Eiffel Tower, things are prone to age. You simply can't avoid it. Because of the ocean around it, the Statue of Liberty has turned green. All that salt water stripped away its natural copper color. But now, what if we told you that it was an iron pillar in Delhi that doesn't rust? It's rust proof. Let's just hope that the Statue of Liberty isn't jealous of this next one. When you first look at it, it looks like a 22-foot tall iron pillar. There's not much fanfare about it. And yet, there is some rust for it, but not much. And that's an amazing thing, because it's 1,600 years old. There should be far more rust and decay on this one. Because of its age and ability to somehow not get older, it's now considered an artifact. Some people even consider it futuristic in its abilities. There are rumors that it might not even be from this world. With all the rumors and crazy phenomena that surround this pole, people have wanted to pass it off as a hoax for the longest time. But unfortunately for the debunkers, there's nothing to debunk. The pole is just a testament to the work and skillsmanship that people had years ago. In addition to that, the pool is 98% pure raw iron. It was most likely created using a coal-heated furnace. So, how does it not rust? It might have been an accident. Some researchers say that it's probably a combination of the lack of lime in the furnace used to make the iron pillar and the presence of raw slag. There are a lot of other elements that go into it. There's a reason why it's not rusting, but that doesn't matter. It's still a pretty impressive feat for 1,600 years old. Number 8, Butterball. It's pretty impressive when you see a boulder this gigantic, especially one that's lasted through the ages. Giant rocks have memorized people for centuries. They've even been considered holy at some points in time. With that being said, now imagine one of these giant rocks looking almost going to tip over, but it's balancing in real time instead. This is where Butterball comes into play. More specifically, it's called Krishna's Butterball, and it comes out of Mahabalipuram, India. Located on a steep rock slope in this historic town, this boulder has been attracting people for years. It looks like it's frozen and rolled down the hill, and no one's quite sure how it does that. A lot of the reasons come from Hindu mythology. It's said that the god Krishna had been just a baby when he was found stealing butter. The giant boulder might be a drop of that butter from the god, or so the mythology says. Today, tourists from all around the world come to take photos in front of the rock. Make it look like they're pushing it down. Hopefully, no one pushes it down one day. So far, no one has, but you never know if the butter will finally split. Number 7, song names. Nowadays, names have become a lot different than they used to be. That's how it usually works. Names go in and out of style. Names that were once popular decades ago are now reserved for older people. As the old names move away, in comes the new ones. It's interesting to know that this isn't how it works in every other place. A place called Kongdong is an Indian village where your name is song. It actually sounds pretty fun. Here's how it works. In this remote town, people have their regular name, a distinct melody, and a shorter tune that's much like a nickname. It all derives from history. In the past, in this village, people used to keep track of one another in the forest, while humming and these songs were used to distinctively separate one another from animal calls. That's why this place also is nicknamed Whistling Village. So now, when a baby is born, it's not just about giving them a song as their name, but it's also paying a lot of respect to the ancestors. It's become a tradition. It's the same way that people name their children after themselves in Western civilization. It's a legacy thing, and we like to think that the names of this town have a cool beat to them. Number 6, floating pillar. When you think of pillars, you might think of them supporting the structure around them. That's a pillar's job after all. There's always an exception to the rule, a standout, if you may. That brings us to the hanging pillar of the Pakshi Temple. It's a beautiful 16th century temple that's located in a small town in India. It was built in the typical style of the architecture of that time, but the temple features a lot of unorthodox sculptures of gods, goddesses, dances, and other likenesses. No matter where you look, you'll be greeted by something extraordinary and beautiful. But the real standout here is that of the 70 stone pillars that are in the place, there's one that hangs from the ceiling. It's not connected to the floor whatsoever. You can even pull a rug underneath it. So this happened because a British engineer had tried to move it, and then it became dislodged from its original position. It technically was an accident, but at the same time, it's still a fine marvel to see today. This is one of those situations where an accident turned into something that tourists want to come see. Here's the hoping that nothing else happens to the other pillars. Number 5, the Tower of Silence. Throughout history, birds have made a big impact on humans. Sure, sometimes they poop on our cars, but for the most part, humans find meaning in their existence. We're talking about doves at weddings and people who believe that cardinals coming to their backyard means a loved one is coming to visit from the afterlife. Even just when people find comfort in feeding the birds in the park, that can have a big meaning for someone. In a small town in Mumbai, vultures bring people a peaceful passage after death. When this all happens to the Tower of Silence on Malabar Hill. The alarming part about this is that the vultures are decreasing in numbers. This is going to affect the century-old ritual. The tower where this all happens is 300 years old, and it's located deep within a 54-acre forest. It's also the place where the deceased lowest streams are placed exposed to scavenger birds. This is their sacred way of dealing with the dead. And unfortunately, because these vultures are decreasing and the number is messing up the natural process, the ritual that's been performed for years is a different way to deal with the dead. And it's probably the first time in history that anyone's wanted a vulture around. So here's the hoping that they do start increasing in population again, because no one left when the ritual gets disturbed. Number 4, buried temple. Who doesn't love stumbling upon a 200-year-old temple? This is exactly what happened to some Indian villagers who unearthed an 80-year-old temple. This is exactly what happened to some Indian villagers who unearthed an 80-year-old temple. It's not only around 200 years old, but it's been swallowed up by massive floods in 1850. Slowly but surely, it was completely covered with sand and sediment by the year 1940. There's still some debate whether or not the temple is 200 years old or 300 years old, but there are a few certain things. The temple itself was dedicated to Lord Narasimha, who was an avatar of the god Shiva. The older generations all created long-lasting memories of visiting the shrine, but unfortunately, their descendants were probably unaware of its existence because of its burial. They did have stories though, and some of those stories weren't even believed, because there was a lack of existence when it came to the temple itself.
Forget about filters. Live unfiltered with the Neutrogena retinol range. It's uniquely formulated for powerful retinol results with less irritation, particularly younger looking skin in London. Live unfiltered with Neutrogena.
So, now with it being on Earth once again, history can start over. New generations can visit it, and hopefully it doesn't get buried again. I guess you could say this temple came back from the dead. Number 3, Lego skeletons. What's scary about a lake that's out in the middle of nowhere? How about a lake filled with skeletons? It's the mystery of India's Lake of Skeletons. High in the Indian Himalayas, there's a small lake nestled in a snowy valley, and all around it you'll find human skeletons. Hundreds of them. It's called Mukund Lake, and it's located about 5,000 meters above sea level at the bottom of a steep slope. This happens to be one of India's highest mountains. You may not always see the skeletons upon arrival, because sometimes the lake remains frozen. For most of the year, actually, it remains frozen, and throughout this process, it expands and shrinks. When the snow melts, skeletons come out to play. Sometimes there's even flesh attached that's well preserved. This is obviously because of the freezing. Right now, there are an estimated 600 to 800 people who have been found with their skeleton remains. The government calls it Mystery Lake. What's going on here? The truth of the matter is no one knows. No one quite understands who the skeletons belong to. They don't know how the people died, and they don't know where they came from. The only story going around right now is that there was an Indian king, his wife, and their descendants, all of whom may have perished in a blizzard around 870 years ago. There's another theory that goes around. Maybe it was Indian soldiers who tried to invade Tibet in 1841, but they were all beaten back. Nothing can ever be proved right now. All we know is that it's a very spooky sight. Number two, Twin Village. Having twins is a rare occurrence. It's usually chalked up to whether or not it's your family genes. So that's why doctors are baffled when it comes to one Indian village where there are 220 sets of twins. Oh, it's crazy, but it could get a little confusing. And it's not like the population is 9 million. Only 2,000 people live in this village. To be more specific, there were 2,000 families. This village in Kerala, and researchers, doctors, along with scientists just don't know what to make of it. Statistically, in this town, there are almost 6 times as many twins born as the average local number. Back in the year 2008, 15 pairs of twins were born in the village out of 300 healthy deliveries. The number is only expected to grow. According to villagers, this phenomenon started about generations ago, and now they don't know what's going on. In any case, at least the baby has a friend for life. Number one, Haunted Temple. We end our list with a haunted temple. It's called the Malcolm Hall, and it's been spoken to people since 2014, maybe even before then. This is the story of Princess Mahal. She comes to Delhi with her 2 children, 15 dogs and 7 servants. It was in the year 2014 when the princess passed away, and then the prince, her son, was found dead along with his belongings ransacked. The spooky part about this story is just all the unanswered questions. How did these people live in such a place without any electricity? Where did they get their food from? How did they die? And now the fact this place sits dormant, it gives off an eerie vibe. What do you think the backstory is? Let us know in the comments. India is a country that's ripe with culture and awesome people. Every day, new stories are being told. There's a history like no other place. So now we know that there are also
I'm going to the front now.
What made you know what time to say?
Yeah, that's what come in here. Just ask you.
We'll just have to find out.
That time Maggie Honey's mother swear me hasn't turned things around? Take control. And I know how it's called to call. There we go. So what you're all saying with culture.
In June 1812, the young United States declared war on the greatest power of the world, Great Britain. For 2.5 years, Americans fought against the British, Canadian colonists, and native nations in a small but bitter war. Yet in the U.S. today, very little of the War of 1812 lives on in the public mind.
It's the forgotten war. It's the war that we don't know too much about. Why was it fought? Where was it fought? Why is it important?
It's the war that Americans have largely forgotten, but the British don't remember it either.
The British, 1812
from the podium out on Moscow the other day. I have no idea there's a war going on the other side of the world.
But it has been forgotten in Britain and the United States. There is a place where people remember the War of 1812, Canada.
In our minds, the War of 1812 is where we defend our liberty of freedom and liberty and democracy.
The native nations that fought alongside the British will remember it too, but not its victory.
There's this sense that we lost because what we lost was the ability to govern ourselves on our own land.
What lasted on every side was a mythical version of history.
Stories grew up and really departed from the truth. These were enshrined in the history books. This was a time when legend and myth often substituted for verifiable history.
Even real stories turned into legends. In Canada, both a frontier housewife and an aristocratic British general became national heroes. In the U.S., a Shawnee chief is still much admired, though he fought on the other side. And the war, composed largely of American defeats, is now remembered for a victory at New Orleans, Old Ironsides, the credo, "Don't give up the ship," and the star-spangled banner fluttering in the dawn.
1812 is a tiny war by world standards. Both sides are struggling, trying to defend their own borders and attack the enemy. The total number of people killed in the war is very small compared to the major wars of the world, and yet it forges the destiny of the continent for 200 years to come.
The War of 1812 was a paradoxical scale. Its armies were small and casualties very few. Yet the battleground stretched across much of North America and beyond. But in Europe, another war raged, a decades-long struggle between Britain and Napoleon's friends. It was this titanic conflict that touched off the War of 1812.
Britain was in a death struggle with Napoleon Bonaparte on the continent of Europe and on the seven seas at the time. It was a world war that was going on. The only way that Britain could really curtail Napoleon's empire building was to cut off supplies from reaching Napoleon's troops. There's dropping ships on the ice.
They don't struggle as I think. Well, they changed my life. That's a big goal.
I saw this illumination that was moving with respect to the stars. We were smart enough to not say, "Yeah, Houston, there's a light out there that's following us." So technically, it comes as unidentified flying object. Neil's buzzer over the surface. Neil switched to the medical chat and spoke directly with the chief medical officer, saying, "They're here, they're part of the trailer, they're watching us." That's causing a lot of stuff.
It seemed to not belong on the moon.
And it has very distinct features of satellite dishes. It positions itself in greater shape. It's got a long pipe that appears to come out of the middle. All sorts of stuff that looks exactly like a satellite dish on Earth looks.
There's an interesting picture on the moon that does appear to show something that could be a bridge, maybe a pipe, could be an ancient worm.
I have no doubt that extraterrestrials could very well have populated or made structures on the far side of the moon.
The reaction of numerous space defense officials was fear astonishing. It didn't make sense that governments and military agencies might not be claiming their goods, wondering who built these structures, where are they from, what do they want.
There is one object that reminds people of a cooling tower from nuclear power plant. Any species that could travel through the stars
enough to put a base on the moon wouldn't have to blink before they can take care of us.
The other thing that is inside this moon module looks like a woman, and this is the alien that they recovered from the ship.
What do you want?
There was a study done that was in the early 1950s, but before NASA, which is, there was sort of this idea that if we weren't having any kind of interaction with alien life form or intelligence, then maybe we should tell the public, because the public might be able to handle it.
As the 45th anniversary of the Apollo 11 mission to the moon dawns, there are many mysteries about man's first lunar landing that remain unsolved. What did the astronauts actually encounter? And what made NASA stop going back to the moon after Apollo 17? Is there evidence of an alien presence on the moon, and perhaps all around us? These startling photographs, recently discovered in NASA's official archive, were taken by the Apollo astronauts themselves. The gigantic artificial-looking structures they documented, which have never been shown on television before, seem to defy simple scientific explanation. Could this be a nuclear power plant of some kind? A massive satellite dish trained on Earth? Even an alien fortress? We took the pictures to some of the brightest people of our world, and nobody can say for sure what these structures represent. Military experts tell us that if there is an alien base on the moon, it poses a serious threat to humanity. Tonight, we'll examine all the evidence. We'll attempt to determine if such an alien menace exists. And we'll investigate the baffling case of Apollo 20. Could this really be a female alien recovered during the secret mission to the moon just a few years after the Apollo program supposedly ended? You decide for yourself as we investigate aliens on the moon, the truth exposed.
It's not a conspiracy.
Look at the skies around the world.
This is saying that it's saying a line of race.
Over the United States, Russia, and China, UFOs are being reported in record numbers. You are looking at what might be actual alien beings caught on camera. This extraordinary video shot by an American researcher in Turkey reportedly shows a hovering extraterrestrial spaceship piloted by ETs known as the Greys. Look closely at the footage. The two aliens appear to be moving around in what might be the craft cockpit. When the craft came back to the same area 2 days later, its appearance changed. Then, 2 nights later, it hovered again, apparently under one alien pilot's control, lit by the moonlight. And what can explain this enormous disc-shaped craft navigating over our moon? And this gigantic cube positioned on the lunar surface? Both were caught on video by a British videographer named John Leonard Walton using a specially designed telescope he assembled. No matter what the answers are, current mass interest in extraterrestrials clearly is at an all-time high.
The sheer number of websites, blogs, YouTube channels, social media accounts, pages, everything dedicated to UFOs and aliens, I think really speaks to how much we are fascinated with and want to believe in alien life and UFOs.
And There are also signs that alien presence could be solar system-wide. Take a look at this incredible event captured by the Solar Dynamics Observatory satellite on March 11, 2012. What is happening to our sun? There appears to be an Earth-sized disk in the corona extracting plasma from the sun's surface. Then, hours later, the dark orb seems to pull away, releasing the plasma filament bands. Many experts are puzzled.
I can't explain what that is, but I can definitely see why aliens may be interested in taking plasma. A lot of these UFOs seem to be encircled by plasma-type energy. So plasma could be a fuel for these aliens. It would make perfect sense if some of these craft are fueled by plasma, that they would go to the sun and actually draw plasma from it to charge their craft.
Hey there, I'm also Prince.
Come on in.
No way, look at you.
Oh, hi.
Me time.
Oh, what am I doing?
No wasted food.
You're welcome.
Pre-portioned ingredients.
Well, tonight is the
Saves cash.
Look at you.
Easy four-step recipes. Squeaky shopping trolley wheel.
Yeah.
Happy kids.
Yes, come sit down.
Delivered to your door.
Oh, hi.
Yeah, distracted by special advice buying more than you need without having anywhere to store them.
No.
Unexpected item in the bagging area.
No.
Please wait for assistance. Are you using your own bag?
No.
Not being able to find what you need.
Absolutely not.
Forget me, you can suddenly go over to check out and have you see that last minute awkward box to the supermarket to grab that said item.
Not in here. Enjoy all the benefits of every place. Delivered conveniently to your door. Pre-portioned meal kit with 4-step easy recipes to follow. Super easy. The whole family can enjoy. Oh, and it's cheaper in the supermarket. Choose your favorite recipes now at everyplace.com.au.
Let's talk next is around flexibility and choice. So just having a good financial position, so we have options in teaching. And what's not already allowed to do that?
And what is happening on the move? Earlier this year, millions of people began pouring over this image captured by Google Move that many major news outlets suggested could be an alien base. Writer Lee Spiegel covered the story for the popular Huffington Post.
Recently, something came to my attention that someone had used the Google Move application, and this person zoomed in closer and closer and came up with an image. It's triangular, 2 lines of 7 lights, perfectly spaced between each other, and those lights are sitting what looks like a black surface, and then immediately below the black surface, there was a very bright white light. And so the question started coming up, is this an extraterrestrial colony? What is this on the moon?
Though some researchers have called this a digital artifact, others still feel it could be an actual lunar construction.
Is it an installation? We really don't know, other than the fact that it has these angles, it has these bright lights, and it really does appear to be man-made in some format.
Perhaps concern over unexplained images like these is prompting governments to investigate. October 1st, 2010. China launches its Chang'e 2 lunar orbiter. Soon, web servers everywhere are mesmerized by this stunning image.
This particular piece of footage seems to show what looks like an installation, facility, factory maybe, on the surface of the moon. It kind of looks like an aerial photograph of something along the line of the North Pole installation or outpost. Clear angles, right angles, seem to show something like an intelligently built structure. The big question is, what is it? What's it used for?
The big picture sparks heated debate among believers and skeptics alike.
then to the general public as well, and then aliens.
But top lunar researchers soon discovered that the image comes not from the Chinese orbiter, but from the archives of NASA.
It turns out it's actually lunar orbiter photograph, so it's actually something NASA took a picture of. The problem is, while it looks really authentic, and it's certainly impressive, and there's no question that it's a legitimate photo, that it's artificial, the reality is that there's no frame number associated with it, so nobody really knows what to go back and check.
Despite the image's original misidentification as coming from the Chinese space program, China's recent landing of a rover on the moon might have sparked renewed interest in the rover NASA is currently operating on Mars. April 8, 2014, TV news outlets throughout America began reporting how this puzzling bright light was captured on or beneath the planet Mars by NASA's Curiosity rover. Though some scientists suspect it could be caused by the sun's reflection or cosmic rays, no one knows for sure what the origin is. Then, earlier this year, people pored over this perplexing image that UFO studies suggested was an alien face. It wasn't the first time a face on Mars captured the public's imagination. In 1976, these pictures, taken by NASA's Viking orbiter of a sphinx-like mason located near huge pyramids in an area called Cydonia, inspired millions to think aliens might have built these things. And perhaps the Egyptian monuments too, due to the obvious geometric similarities. For some scientists who were initially excited about the cosmic implications, say more recent NASA pictures might help explain the face's human appearance.
When I grew up in the 70s, it was the Viking images showed that unusual face in the Cydonia region. But when we got the Mars little surveyor out and started to take different camera angles, different lighting angles, it became quite obvious that it was just a large mesa with very interesting lighting angles that made it look like a face.
Nevertheless, signs an ET race might have built an outpost closer to Earth. In the same year, the Viking orbiter image made headlines with the publication of the book, Somebody Else is on the Moon. Its author pointed to very unusual NASA photos, including one of a lunar region called Mare Crisium, where years earlier, newspapers reported a bridge had mysteriously appeared. But the Mare Crisium image taken by the Apollo 16 astronauts seems to contain structures much more startling and potentially ominous.
See, you have not looked like a castle wall. It looks like a castle wall. It looks like that's got 3 little arrow slits, maybe some alloys to the top. Off to the side, you see something that looks more like a platform, and extruding from the center of it is this tower-type object. It definitely extrudes up. It's got a shadow out to the side. The thing it's setting on is very interesting because it's very circular, very round. And also it seems to have some shadow underneath it. Some people see what you might term as a cooling tower from the nuclear power plant.
Other researchers contend the so-called castle wall at Mare Crisium actually resembles a fortress with a turret, or pipe of some kind, extending out of it, casting a dark shadow underneath. Could this be an enormous weapon defending an entire nuclear complex?
Not only was this spark jutting out at apparently a 45-degree angle with a ball-appearing object on the very end of it, there have been estimates that this structure may be as much as a mile in diameter and width. Well, there certainly is something artificial.
An equally perplexing NASA photo included in the book Somebody Else is on the Moon seemed to show unknown objects carving long, deep tracks into the lunar terrain. And at least one of these objects apparently had the ability to move in mystifying ways.
If you follow these back to their point of origin, the one in the foreground rolled up and out of the crater. To me, this photograph
activity on the moon, inexplicable activity on the moon.
Indications that NASA and possibly the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency were determined to keep such baffling lunar activity a secret can be seen in the harrowing story of petroleum engineer Vito Sakari. With a copy of Somebody Else's on the Moon in hand, he and a friend stormed the gates of NASA's Houston Space Flight Center. Shortly after the Apollo mission ended, demanding to see sharp versions of the pictures the book contained. But he was stonewalled from the start.
Well, if you're anything like me, you love it with lunch. But you hate tracking your expenses. But now I love tracking my expenses because with MYOB's Capture app, you can scan and upload receipts and then throw them away. Go and set. Watch this. I usually make those
There were endless meetings, endless numbers of forms we had to fill out, but it was clear they were trying to discourage. They didn't want us to go any further. So we got back on the phone and we called them back and said, you know what? We got this book, we're gonna duplicate 1,000 copies. I can't get to drop on me by other side. And we're spreading this information right. We got a call back and said, all right, we'll make arrangements for you to have access to these photographs.
The images he was permitted to view in a high security archive revealed things literally out of this world. Sakari was overwhelmed.
We're escorted into this room, and it's like 5 or 6 of these full-length tables turned out to be more than 1,000 things. But the resolution was very high, and at that moment, the whole occasion turned. It became almost solemn. Because we knew what we were looking at. And we knew what it meant. And our structures, they were like the rigid and clear as you go. And there was machinery and the tank track, but what appeared to be tank track. And when I looked at those clear images, we knew that we were looking at an existing or an ancient technology. These things in the world, these things are manufactured, these things were built, and they were built on a huge scale.
A massive scale that suggests a race of beings we might not be able to successfully confront, should we have to.
If hostile extraterrestrials are on the surface of the moon and are planning some sort of assault on the Earth, big living creatures with entities that are far in advance of us, I often wonder, would we even stand a chance?
As we've just seen, there is growing evidence of an alien presence in our skies, in the solar system, and most shocking, on the surface of the moon. Investigators point to this NASA photo taken by the Apollo 16 astronauts, and can identify what appears to be a huge fortress consisting of a towering cylindrical structure positioned next to what might be a gun turret extending out for more than a mile in the Mare Crisium region. Is this proof from NASA's own archive of an alien base existing on the side of the moon that always faces Earth? And might this base even include a massive satellite dish? Experts see the dish and its location as a cause for alarm.
If we, the general public, can see this imagery on the surface of the moon, then it's clear that the military gun base can as well. They might well be quaking in their boots, wondering who built these structures, where are they from, what do they want?
If what researchers say is right, that this is potentially an army atomic facility of some kind, then the advanced extraterrestrial race of beings who built it managed to include something nearby that Earth-based telecommunications companies can only get off.
people are looking at a South Crater and then you see something that looks like a satellite dish, and maybe even with a base underneath.
It has very, very clear, very distinct features of satellite dishes. It's got the dish itself with greater shape. It's got a long spike that come out of the middle. And down below, you can see structural members, cross beams, all sorts of stuff that looks exactly like a satellite dish on Earth is. Top researchers are convinced what we are looking at is nothing less than an engineered technological wonder, miles in diameter. Its intricacies are hard to ignore. Look at what might be a parabolic reflector dish, a subreflector mounted on a mast over the dish, and an underlying substructure of girders and supports that not only hold up the dish, they also house the mechanism that rotates and aims the dish in a specific direction. When, you make a visual comparison where it matches up exactly with something terrestrial, that's artificial, my conclusion is, well, that's what it is. It's not a puppy-looking crater, it really is a satellite. Remember, this is very close to the possible nuclear installation and its protective armament. Might it be a listening device to the stars, our Earth, or an alien home planet?
There may be radar solutions, the kind of radio telescope dishes that are used by the SETI organization in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. We are sending signals from Earth on our space. They use these dishes. We've all seen them, we all know what they look like. And there are several of these dishes on the moon.
Are they monitoring us? Are they watching us? Are they preparing for an attack? We just really don't know.
This gargantuan one, measuring miles in diameter, looks big enough to hear an interplanetary whisper. If we could build stuff that big and make it useful and find ways for it to be used, we would do so. We just can't build them big ourselves. On a very advanced ancient civilization, higher technology only certain people. But there are scientists who suggest that this is the remnants of a naturally occurring crater called a star, formed from being decimated by meteors, striking the lunar surface nearby over eons of time.
So, 100, a million years later, 10 million years later, another impact blast happens over the place. And it blows all of the loose radioactive material away. So what we're left with is effectively the shell of that original impact crater, left almost looking freestanding now by itself on the lunar surface.
Despite such prosaic attempts to explain away something so visually compelling, Edgar Mitchell, the sixth Apollo astronaut to walk on the moon, is not so dismissive.
I suspect they're looking at the patent and discovering it, that's true. I have no doubt that extraterrestrials could very well have populated a base structure from the far side of the moon.
Though he hasn't seen the structures himself, Mitchell has a good idea of what he finds.
First of all, we gotta have habitat. Well, I suspect these Jews have to shoot and eat and like we do. They maybe have different bodies and so forth, but they still have nourishment problems. And they have to have structures that support those necessities.
I think it's interesting that Apollo 14 astronaut Edgar Mitchell walked on the moon and is also such a firm believer in aliens. It strikes me very interesting that somebody who devoted their life to science and who actually went to the moon and was there for science and with technological backing has this interesting connection with aliens.
Mitchell's belief in aliens existing on the moon has been recently validated by the book ULOs, Unidentified Lunar Objects Revealed in NASA Photography. But its author did not initially set out to find what some experts now regard as definitive evidence of alien constructions on the moon.
Originally, I was just putting in a costume book of the best picture I could take of my initial photo. And then on the other page, a photo from the Apollo missions in the same area. I started to see a lot of strange things on the surface of the moon.
Beginning with official NASA images taken by the Apollo 8 astronauts, Sterling soon pinpointed complex geometric structures that clearly looked unnatural. Startled and confused about his discovery, he sought answers.
I did further research on the topic, and started to see other people have been talking about surface of the moon from some kind of alien presence.
Our presence, even skeptically minded experts, are hard pressed to explain.
I visited with the archaeologist at St. Columns in Tucson, and she happened to be a doctor of archaeology. And started showing us the reasons. She was kind of stunned by them. And then I exposed to her that these are actually on the moon. And she said to me, I did not told me those were on the moon. I was told those were man-made.
Could this be yet another gigantic ET satellite station, large enough to be seen from orbit? Filmed by the Apollo 8 astronauts, it's located close to the far side of the moon. It suggests an alien presence extends to the lunar side perpetually hidden from human eyes.
There's so many examples of these things that it's undeniable. Someone needs to sit down and look at this stuff and really check it out. That's what I found.
Perhaps that was a primary directive of the Apollo 8 mission itself, to not only focus its cameras on the far side of the moon, but to actually spy on aliens occupying the place the United States government wanted to control as a military staging of last resort, in case of a nuclear war with the former Soviet Union.
It's kind of ironic that at the dawn of the 1960s, the US Army had a significant project in place called Project Horizon. And this was essentially a program to build a manned base on the surface of the moon. And the idea was, in the event that the Soviets launched a sneak attack on the United States, if in the worst case scenario, a lot of the US military bases got taken out, at least we could launch a counterattack with missiles situated on the surface of the moon. But the big irony is, we chose not to build a base, but very possibly somebody else from somewhere else has done exactly that.
According to experts now studying provocative NASA pictures that show mysterious artificial structures existing on the moon, there's clear evidence that alien race might have built fortifications and possible weapons for either offensive or defensive purposes.
When we see things like facilities, installations, factories, in some cases what even look like radar dishes, possibly even nuclear installations on the surface of the moon, I think it has to be wary as well.
Many of these official NASA photographs were taken by Apollo 8. The U.S. mission that beat the Russians in putting men into lunar orbit. Its cameras focused on the far side, capturing inexplicable structures, highly indicative of intelligent design. But NASA and the United States government were possibly already aware of alien structures on the far side of the moon, thanks to their Russian space rivals. 2 years before, and 4 years to the day of the historic Apollo 11 moon landing, an unmanned Soviet spacecraft, Zone 3, took 2 pictures of mysterious objects that have baffled experts for decades. One of them showed an absolutely crystal clear tower sticking out of the surface of the moon. You could not see through it. It could be a solid object, and there's no way that anything sticking straight up onto the surface like that, 22 miles high to it then, could possibly be natural. It has to be artificial. Another image looked later in orbit is a picture of what appears to be a sort of shattered dome type structure. Again, sticking 5-10 miles above the lunar surface that holds much to the roof of it, and absolutely clearly should not be there. There's no natural model under which either one of these objects can be on these photographs. Yet there they are, and they've been on these official Russian photographs now for over 40 years. Enhancements of the damaged dome suggest that there has been significant amounts of deterioration, most likely from long-term bombardment of meteors. Yet the dome still looks very geometric. Could this be remnants of an alien habitat? Whether the Apollo 8 astronauts were aware of the Soviet Zone 3 photos remains unclear, but they did manage to film their own inexplicable tower that has mystified experts. Could this be a lunar skyscraper with a broadcasting antenna? And how could this perplexing Apollo 8 image of enormous structures so clearly artificial be anything but the work of intelligent beings.
There's an interesting picture on the moon that does appear to show something that could be a bridge, maybe a pipe, could be an ancient worm. But the reality is that image is taken off of the edge of the impact crater, right in the ejected blanket. So right in the middle of the blast zone.
So are hard pressed to explain naturally.
So it's theoretically possible that some of this material may have formed bridges of some sort, but it's probably most likely that this was just a jumble of material and that's how it ended up landing.
Take a good look at the arching bridge and the obvious shadow of gas. On Earth, it would dwarf any raised roadway mankind has ever erected. And what does the worm-like pipe positioned on top of the adjacent structure represent? Using technology similar to what NASA uses for creating 3D virtual theaters of two-dimensional features on planets, we can see what it would be like to fly under, around, and over the structures. It's easy to appreciate the alarming scale involved here. Whatever the structures are, they appear to be architectural marvels, constructed long before humans touched down on the lunar surface. Micro builders have been monitoring NASA missions, anticipating our arrival.
I saw this, illumination that was moving with respect to the stars. We were smart enough to not say, Houston, there's a light out there that's following us. So technically, it comes as unidentified flying object.
Apollo 11 astronaut Buzz Aldrin, the second man to walk on the moon, admits that UFOs seemingly tracked the spacecraft from a relatively close distance. Although he persistently denies allegations that he and fellow astronaut Neil Armstrong encountered aliens on the moon, other former members of NASA say otherwise.
There's been a lot of rumors about what actually took place during the lunar mission while Neil and Buzz were over the surface. Back at the Johnson Space Center, during a couple minutes of broken communication, Neil switched over to the medical channel to speak directly with the chief medical officer of the mission. And that, the comment was, he says, they're here, they're all here, parked around the equator, and they're watching us.
Interestingly, the late Neil Armstrong made cryptic comments at the White House in 1994. For the 25th anniversary of the Apollo 11 mission that has made many people wonder if a cover might be involved.
We believe you much that is undone. There are great ideas undiscovered. Breakthroughs available to those who can remove one of truth's protective layers. There are places to go beyond belief.
Take Telfast at the first line of hay fever symptoms. Nothing beats Telfast for fast, non-drowsy, 24-hour action. And why Telfast available for a great price every day at Chemist Warehouse.
I've always wondered why Neil Armstrong mentioned something about pulling back the veil of secrecy and finding truth in that press conference on the 20th anniversary of the Apollo 11 landing. I mean, I have no idea what he's referencing, and I don't even want to know.
Yet another NASA mission, the one ET believer Edgar Mitchell was on, might have filmed the definitive evidence of aliens on the moon.
The Apollo 14 mission was a really good mission. Most people don't realize that only two of the astronauts were actually on the surface. The other was taken on board in the command module and continued to circle around and around the moon, and taking pictures and photographs that were completely covering all of the backside of the moon.
Back on Earth, the footage was shown to one of NASA's top astronomers. During the viewing, an extraordinary sequence came on screen.
The command module was coming on the backside of the moon with the camera rolling. There's like a cluster of 5 little zones with light shining, and there was one of them that looked like a column of steam or something projected up from the top. So there was something really there. I guarantee it was certainly something that was not natural to occur so much.
But when the footage was played again the next day for NASA engineers, the key section with the mysterious domes had somehow disappeared.
I took the film out, and there was no splices, there were no cuts, and all of those lined up. That means within 24 hours, they had to take the film up, got the question out, made a copy, airbrushed it out, sliced it back in, and then made a duplicate of it, and had it right over.
Such accusations that NASA has routinely airbrushed out evidence of alien activity convinced.
If a NASA program manager told me that he had screened the Apollo 14 footage for astronomers that had shown some sort of glowing light on the moon, then that section of the film was spliced out, I would wonder whether the film was damaged. I would wonder if there was a reason that the film had to be tampered with. I wouldn't necessarily say it's covering up aliens.
But NASA might have had motivation to cover up ET artifacts on the moon. Prior to the Apollo missions, a Brookings Institution report warned NASA officials that such a discovery of an ET presence would result in nothing short of the disintegration of society as we know it. There definitely appears to be, between all the different things that I've looked at, there definitely appears to be an agenda to keep hidden from the general public what's actually on the moon. There's no question that there's artificial structures, the base is there, and that's something that NASA does not want people to realize. The governmental belief is that enough people actually came to the conclusion that there was some sort of forward base and advanced base on the moon that we would go crazy, we would stop coming to work, we would stop being productive, our society would stop moving forward, everything would brighter, will ultimately be thrown back to the stone age. Maybe that's one reason why Buzz Aldrin, when asked to view photos containing potential alien structures, refused to do so, suggesting that others in NASA have that responsibility.
No way. Don't you think the people who designed the camera, sent it out as an experiment, and pictures came back, they looked at it to see if there was anything unusual, and they didn't find anything. If they had, either we got some people who were scared to talk about it, or they're withholding evidence, and that's not what science is about. Science is about informing people what evidence has been found. And those are experts.
But how can any expert explain away this startling photo shot by the Apollo 11 astronauts, showing what appears to be a gigantic flying saucer parked on the lunar surface? It looks distinctly artificial, with some sort of machined bridges or indentions running all the way around the top and almost decorative in appearance. Overall, it resembles a classic alien ship. Yet Aldrin still would not look at the baffling picture, despite the fact he was likely involved in shooting it.
I don't want to even get involved in it.
Is Aldrin hiding something about this saucer that was caught in official NASA photography sitting on the surface of the moon? To confirm the saucer photo isn't doctored, we decided to take it to a top imaging analyst. Coming up later, his exclusive investigation and astonishing conclusions. Though Apollo 11 astronaut Buzz Aldrin would not comment on official NASA photos containing possible evidence of aliens on the moon, one astonishing picture taken during his historic mission shows what looks like a huge saucer or intricately designed building.
You can see clear angles that seem to suggest intelligent construction. The big question is, who by? Is it some sort of secret space program? Is it aliens? We just don't know, but I think the onus is on us to try and find out further.
Look at this perplexing NASA photo of the moon's Kepler crater. Taken by Lunar Orbiter 3 in 1967, it is causing heated debate on the internet and within the UFO research community. The entire crater looks like a strip mine. Part of the top rim has been completely sheared off, and a large piece of the wall that was somehow cut away lies beneath inside. There's a massive pile of possibly destroyed buildings in the center, perhaps a mile and a half down, and an enormous white rectangular slab could be hiding something very large where the left side of the crater rim had been. The area in front suggests some form of concrete piping and sticking out, and noble openings of these pipes, tubes, embedded, could be designed to vent some gas status or paper. Not surprisingly, a suspicious sign NASA might be concerned about this photo, showing potential alien activity on the moon, can be found in this picture NASA released several years later of the same crater. It looks completely different, almost pristine. The crater rim is now completely intact, the wall appearing untouched by excavation. Maybe it's not the crater that has changed, but rather the photographic details. And the former NASA employee says, doctoring a photo like this is all part of the job. Donna Hare remembers the first time she witnessed the NASA colony, altered a similarly provocative image, one showing a hovering flying saucer.
I looked at him, I said, "This is your UFO." And he's smiling at me, and he crosses his arms, he says, "I can't tell you that." And I said, "What are you going to do with this piece of information?" He says, "We have to airbrush these out." As I realized that, I started asking different people that worked out there, and what I found was some people knew about it, and other people didn't. But the people that told me that it was a cover-up would tell me off-site. They wouldn't talk about it. They'd tell me, "Don't ever say I said it," or I'll say, "I didn't."
Hare reveals that retouching out possible evidence of aliens in our skies and on the lunar surface is par for the course. And NASA has strict guidelines for deciding what images to alter.
What was censored in photographs was technology that's not related to us, really, that is really high tech. The craft that I saw being taken out was right over the trees. I don't know anything that can hover like that. One time I went into the slab lab where they airbrush, and the woman that was airbrushing like negatives, she was trying to cover up something on the moon.
But this eye-opening footage shot by Apollo 8 as the astronauts circled the moon has never been suppressed, nor explained for that matter. Is it evidence of possible industrial-like technology existing there?
In 1968, as Apollo 8 flew over the lunar surface, one of their cameras captured an anomaly. It looked similar to a smokestack jutting from the surface of the moon. And just as the camera passes by, it appears to release some kind of a jet, like a little cloud that drifts to the right.
According to researchers, what makes the film sequence so extraordinary is how it's shot.
One thing that makes this footage special is that you can see motion within the span of stills. I mean, as the camera is moving over the lunar surface, you actually see this smokestack-like anomaly change perspective as it gets closer and closer to the camera.
Apollo 8 was flying 70 miles above the lunar surface when it shot this footage. Viewable in both black and white and color. The smokestack has been estimated to be more than 1,000 feet tall. Is this gigantic structure somehow connected to the same vast mining operation seemingly documented in NASA's Lunar Orbiter 3-162 photo of Kepler crater? Also, what exactly is being mined here and throughout the moon? Scientists have discovered the moon's surface is rich with helium-3, a fuel that can, in theory, run highly efficient nuclear fusion reactors. Helium-3 could well be the solution to the world's growing energy needs. Its existence on the moon was confirmed during the Apollo 17 mission. There are altogether 15 tons of helium-3 on Earth, while the moon holds more than 5 million tons trapped in the surface material called regolith.
This helium-3 ultimately could be used not only by us, but by aliens. And then what we are seeing is part of the mining operation.
Could this also explain the appearance of carbon heat traps in the lunar surface when the circular socket pipelines crossing over the lunar terrain, spigots and valves, and huge pipes crossing over entire craters, such as what this extraordinary photo researchers discovered at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory a few years ago seems to show.
The photograph was so incredible, it had a pipe running through a crater, going from one wall to the other wall, proceeding underground, where you could follow it on top of the surface to what appeared to be a cliff, and this pipe extended right through the cliff out into the open, and it had a very unusual, what appeared to be extension on the end of the pipe. It can always be artificial.
The extension looks remarkably like a funnel-shaped pipe thing positioned on top of a vertical pole pointing up into space. Perhaps the funnel regulates the venting of vapor, like was seen in the Apollo 8 smokestack footage. Whether we are seeing the mining for nuclear fusion materials or some sort of thermal venting on the moon, most experts say one thing is clear. The photo evidence is authentic, and the puzzling lunar structures must have some connection to each other. Take, for example, this inexplicable structure that plainly should not exist on the moon, in a location NASA has scrutinized heavily prior to putting men on the surface.
The area on the moon called Science 90 is basically an existing one of the areas that's been the most photographed because initially it was thought it might be a good landing site for the first Apollo lunar landing. Now, there is one particular photograph of this area, and in one of the frames, you see this thing, this tower sticking up out of the ground, which has this wire assembly at the very top of it, which looks like 200 of a paper clip wrapped around a pencil or a post or something like that, sticking a mile or 2 miles out of the lunar surface.
While the base of the structure is partly in shadow, the metallic top is quite unique, not only because of its unusual shape, but because of how it reflects the light in two directions.
It's an amazing structure. There's no way to explain it, and it's unquestionably authentic because it came offload images, data, negatives that we got right out of NASA's own archives.
Could this bizarre array be a beacon of some sort, more sensitive than anything we have on Earth? Or a warning device designed to alert the inhabitants of unwelcome visitors? NASA might be asking the very same questions, considering how many of Earth's space probes have mysteriously vanished around nearby planets, and most notably, Mars.
Dehydrated steam of the advanced hydrogens which drain from the industry of 90 minutes well.
An extraordinary photo snapped by Apollo 11 seems to document the mysterious saucer was parked on the moon as Buzz Aldrin and Flight Commander Neil Armstrong made their way down to their meeting with destiny. Aldrin will discuss this shocking saucer image or other NASA photos researchers have uncovered showing potential alien artifacts, but we've asked the top imaging expert his opinion about the picture. And tonight, he'll reveal whether or not this is hard proof Apollo 11 was not alone that historic day 45 years ago. Yet Aldrin is encouraging the world and our space program to focus on another thing that might have an alien artifact on it. Though he isn't sure if this rectangular object embedded in the Martian moon photos is of intelligent origin or not, Aldrin considers Phobos an ideal launching point for a mission to the Red Planet, no matter what the structure is.
I can't conceive of it being other than a naturally formed rock formation. How? I don't know. That's not my business. I looked at other people who are into the mechanics of what would form a moon like that. Is it an asteroid? Is it the sum of things that came together, like the asteroid belt? Did it get kicked off somewhere? I have no idea.
was while researching landing sites on Phobos that Aldrin learned of the monolith, a huge stone slab almost 300 feet across that is similar to the alien structure in the classic sci-fi film 2001: The Space Odyssey. Aldrin finds it interesting that a scientist has come forward supporting the notion this could be artificial.
It surprised me that an extremely credible person, a professor, who is part of professional societies in the subject of settlements and colonization, he's aware of this. And he says, absolutely, without a doubt, it is not a natural formation. He doesn't know anything other than that, but he just says it's not.
And Aldrin recognizes that such academic support for the alien origin hypothesis for the Phobos monolith could help get people excited about exploring Mars and its moons.
I am interested in the public supporting what we're doing for a variety of reasons. And if some cookie part of the public over here thinks that this monolith has been put there by aliens, fine, they're going to create a lot of enthusiasm. And it's going to get people wondering, and they're not going to be satisfied until it's proven one way or the other, and even then.
Phobos has always been a source of controversy. In the early 1960s, several prominent physicists claimed that the moon was actually an artificial satellite pulled into Martian orbit by aliens. The theory has its supporters even today, but there's a bigger mystery about Phobos, unsolved for almost 30 years, one which investigators are still trying to explain.
The Soviet Union in July 1988 launched two probes to Mars, Phobos 1 and Phobos 2. Now, approximately a month or so after the launch, Phobos 1 disappeared. The Russians lost it. Now, they attributed this loss to a combination of computer and human error.
But the story that subsequently emerged is far more chilling. Russian researchers went public, claiming a shadowy, unidentified craft may have destroyed Phobos 1 before going on to eliminate Phobos 2 in a startling sequence of events captured on film. Just before vanishing forever, Phobos 2 photographs what might be a gigantic alien spaceship with bad intentions. Broadcast on Russian television and described as a thin ellipse, the image resembles a needle or a dagger aimed at the Martian moon. Whatever its true shape, it is estimated to be larger than any craft mankind has conceived of.
I'm talking about 25 kilometers in length and a kilometer and a half in diameter. Now, according to Glenn Cosmos, the Russian agency at that time, this object or something turned toward their spacecraft and rammed it, knocked it out of orbit.
The American Defense Establishment curiously remains silent about the incident, perhaps because American probes have reportedly been destroyed near Mars as well.
But we do know for certain that several unmanned missions, spacecraft missions to Mars that have been launched by NASA, that we lost several. These are expensive missions that as they were closer to Mars, suddenly they just stopped operating. It didn't happen before, it happened at least 2 times. Where we lost billion-dollar spacecraft for unknown reasons, and NASA still is under control with what they know did happen.
Is NASA withholding information about a dangerous alien presence operating around Mars? Recent photographs taken by the Mars Curiosity rover suggest a UFO similar to what seemingly destroyed Russian and perhaps U.S. space probes might still be patrolling the Martian skies.
You have power. You can control the energy and you're spending. Trust good usage of the common domain. Users and families. Users have power to take control.
Earlier this year, the rover's cameras captured an almost identical cylindrical-shaped UFO as the one Phobos 2 photographed back in 1989, right before it was obliterated. This time, the cylinder appears to be rocketing over the planet, remaining in view for roughly 10 minutes before it disappeared. Researchers first believed the moving image resulted from the camera shutter staying open, producing a time-lapse effect. But upon examination, the shutter speed was normal. Alarming, some military insiders say the U.S. government is keenly aware there's a real ET threat facing.
We were aware that there's a possibility of an unknown presence, possibly alien extraterrestrial, near the Earth.
John Brandenburg is a former deputy manager of the Clementine mission, a classified operation designed to map and investigate all corners of the moon.
It was a forward reconnaissance mission, basically to check out if someone was building bases on the moon that we didn't know about. Was it expanding them?
Brandenburg said Clementine's lunar photos were analyzed by an elite Defense Department team with the highest security clearance.
They basically kept to themselves and did their work. And we were told not to interfere with them unless we had a special reason. So only the higher ups from the Naval Research Lab were up there.
But Brandenburg recalls a previous training he did have with top military brass who were studying riveting footage showing UFOs navigating away from a laser-like weapon being fired upon them.
I'm sitting in this room full of retired Armenian Air Force generals, a few admirals, and we're watching what looks like a firefight in space. The most senior general there, an Army general, turned to me and said, "Where do you think they're from?" And I said, "I don't know, sir. I've heard they're from 40 languages." His comment was, "Long supply lines." When the Army general says long supply lines, he was already thinking of, how do I deal with these people from far away? How do I make them go back to where they came? The reaction of numerous space defense officials who I watched these movies with was here in times.
It's NASA footage like this, showing UFOs flying so close to our planet, and the veil of secrecy we witnessed during Clementine's mapping of the lunar surface that prompted Brandenburg to begin searching for proof-positive photos of aliens on the moon. Once he saw the main structure depicted on the cover of ULOs, unidentified lunar objects revealed in NASA photography, he knew he had hit Peter.
All the pictures I've seen from the moon that show possible structures, the most impressive is a picture of a miles-wide rectilinear structure. This was unmistakably artificial, and it shouldn't be. As someone in the space defense community, I look on any such structure on the moon with great concern because it is enormous. There's no way we could have built such a thing. It means someone else is up there.
In this striking photo taken by Apollo 15, you can clearly see the structure from orbit, looking like a sprawling complex, or prison, as some have described it, stretching out across the lunar terrain. What could it possibly represent? Here in this digital simulation of what it might be like to fly in from space and circle the structure, you can see what it might look like up close, either today or in the movie's distant past. Finding this Apollo 15 image was just the beginning of Brandenburg's discovery process. Photo after photo presented in the book and also available in NASA's official archive added to his conviction that the U.S. government knows of an alien presence on the moon. And he embarked on a mission to help bring the best images into the public spotlight and alert our citizens of the considerable stakes involved.
U.S. Defense Department concerns about apparent alien activity in space and on the moon have been confirmed by a top military expert, and the photographic evidence in NASA's own archives suggesting there might actually be ET lunar base potential nuclear capability is frightening, especially when compared to one of the most dangerous confrontations in history, which could have ended human civilization.
As the seeing pictures that triggered human missile crisis, I look on these images as even more provocative, even more suggestive that somebody is building structures where they should be, on our moon.
Now, if we kind of draw a parallel with what's going on the moon, maybe we're actually seeing some sort of staging project, that in the same way Cuba was affected the United States in '62, the moon is suddenly slowly being turned into a threat to the people of Earth.
What worries researchers, and presumably military brass, are what the aliens might be planning.
If hostile extraterrestrials are on the surface of the moon and are planning some sort of assault on the Earth, then I would hope and think that governments and military agencies are preparing something as a counterforce. Now, whether they would actually have the ability to, that's the big question. If we're dealing with creatures with entities that are far in advance of us, I often wonder, would we even stand a chance, or would it be game over before we even barely began?
With such potentially dire stakes for mankind involved, Mark D'Antoni, a photo and video analyst with more than 30 years of experience, is attempting to determine if the most compelling photographic evidence proves an alien threat is real. So far, his investigation has determined we have real reason for concern.
Well, there is a lot of very compelling video and photo evidence that indicates that something is happening up there. There are some structures I have seen in images that I've seen of the moon that I have not been able to display.
Images like this one that mystify both D'Antonio and Defense Department expert Brandenburg.
There's an interesting structure on the moon that I've seen that looks like several wagon wheels in a row, either bending into the moon or the surface, or just sitting there kind of on an angle.
Seems to show a large, flat structure, and then below it, some either wheel or dome-like structures.
And this is clearly provocative. This does not look like a natural geologic feature.
Could these massive wheels, half buried beneath the lunar surface, be designed for mining, excavation, or possibly traversing the rocky lunar landscape in a vehicle otherworldly in scale?
Anyone who analyzes this knows it's an enormous size. These things are miles across. If someone built this, they're very big, very big. These things are taller than Sears Tower.
The chassis car is crafted for the whole process. Help switch off your car with Turitas. Its double action pompa breaks down mucus and clears chest congestion. Get Turitas for a great price every day at Kenneth Warehouse.
Some researchers are convinced these are energy-creating machines supporting an alien complex right out an epic sci-fi movie.
To me, it looks like the power generators for like the rebel base on one of the Star Wars movies. There's an incredible half-buried brown sort of certain turbine generators. They're all sort of lined up and packed together around this other block as if they were the power generators from sort of factory or something else operating on the surface. It's absolutely incredible images.
Another huge structure that has analysts stumped is a massive-sized bridge and puzzling pipe seen sitting high above nearby.
I'm familiar with the bridge and the worm-like worm-like pipe from the Poly stone mills. Yeah. My reaction to the bridge is that the lunar surface is undulating. Now, could it really be a bridge? Sure, maybe.
Energy expert D'Antonio sees much more that he feels should not be standing on the moon. Well, it's interesting that one of the photos actually shows what looks like a tower here. That looks like not just one, but two in one actually. And I have to say that that one I found to be perplexing because I couldn't figure out what it was.
Many experts feel the same way about this baffling Apollo 17 image of what looks like an interplanetary vehicle sitting out in the open on the moon. Fuel over orbit, the ornate structure seems to have an artificially crafted pointy top and row of evenly spaced portholes or windows encircling it. Roughly a half mile in diameter, the window in front may actually be a portal for another craft.
And there's some people that look at these creatures and they see a space capsule or some other alien structure. But in reality, it could be something completely different.
What I look at the capsule is it is rather intriguing because it looks like a 3D object sticking up off the moon, at least at first glance. Now, there's a rectangular looking window in the front that some people might have called a hangar, where ships can go in and out, but that's what this is, a large vessel of some kind. It's hard to tell.
In this NASA-like virtual flying from space, it's easy to appreciate why even the most skeptical experts marvel at this image. The capsule-looking structure appears to be completely foreign to the surrounding terrain, and its position suggests it might have even crashed there, or was marooned, unable to take off from where it was perched. But the one NASA picture that stands out even more to imaging analyst D'Antonio as a potential alien spaceship on the moon might change the way we look at our place in the universe. The historic Apollo 11 mission and the second astronaut who landed it.
Well, it's interesting picture turned up where you actually see what looks like a giant saucer sitting on the moon. And that's what it is. It's massive. It's huge. It's a mothership. And it's sitting on the lunar surface. And even has a, looks like it has a sloped top and a little thing on top. As long as you look at that and you startle and say, wow, that's very interesting.
While D'Antonio is quite curious why Buzz Aldrin disavows any knowledge of this saucer, he is intrigued by how intricately constructed it appears to be.
And it has the intervals of evenly spaced compartments, if you will, moving around the outside. I find that compelling because those don't look like naturally occurring objects.
The veteran photo analyst believes this official Apollo 11 picture is not the result of a trick of lighting or any other optical illusion. He contends it is real, and his findings could lead many researchers to deem it the smoking gun that UFO and alien believers have longed for, despite Aldrin's refusal to address it.
Whether this was actually the famous Apollo 11 UFO seen during the transit to the moon by the Apollo 11 crew, that remains to be discovered somewhere else down the line.
If Aldrin and NASA are hiding knowledge of this gigantic saucer on the moon, they could be following a script laid down many years ago by the U.S. government when contact with aliens was considered a major concern to be carefully guarded and not officially revealed due to mass panic that might ensue.
Before NASA was in the early 1960s. And among the findings, there was sort of this idea that if we were to find any alien structures or have any kind of interaction with alien life form or intelligence, then maybe we should tell the public because the public might not be able to handle it.
Welcome home, sir. It's lovely to be back. Is there anything you want to tell me? I can tell anybody. I think something's going on, mister.
You're not Esther, who are you?
A structure being created by another entity other than anyone on planet Earth implies that somebody else is here, or was here, and we want to obviously protect ourselves. We want to make sure that we know who they are and what they're doing there.
How will the world react to this potentially earth-shattering news that a leading photographic authority has confirmed we might now have the ultimate proof that Apollo 11 encountered a mysterious alien race on the moon, that our astronauts and the U.S. government are still covering up. What is truly at stake here?
Well, the concern is someone has built a base apparently on the moon that's not us. What are they doing there? What are their intentions? Is the space occupied? Is it being expanded? Has it been expanded since Apollo days? Is somebody doing their job down at the Pentagon, watching this space continue? The moon is the space defense community. Everyone understands whoever owns the moon, who owns the current unit. It's either going to be the human race or someone else.
According to the official record, NASA exploration of the moon by sending astronauts there ended with Apollo 17. But this long-accepted notion has come into question the last few years, primarily due to shocking allegations and never-before-seen videos that have changed the way we view ourselves, the space program, and alien life forever.
Well, officially, the last Apollo mission was Apollo 17 in 1972. They had planned to do Apollo 18, 19, and 20, but those were supposedly canceled due to some problems with technical and financing issues. However, around 2007, a man surfaced on the internet, calling himself William Russell, saying that there was, in fact, an Apollo 20 in 1976, and that he was one of the astronauts, and that they actually traveled to the far side of the moon, landed, and explored an alien space. And footage from this excursion began to slowly leak out on the internet, showing not only these exotic structures, but most shockingly, a body that appears to be a mummified alien woman, maybe even a hibernating female woman.
Exceedingly documented in these videos this rubbish released from an undisclosed location. The former civilian test pilot and his fellow crew members, pilot Leona Snyder and a Russian cosmonaut named Alexei Leonov, trained in flights before secretly launching into space from Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. Rutledge claimed the mission's origins stemmed from an extraordinary NASA photo, one which had previously convinced many researchers for years that evidence of aliens had been found on the lunar surface.
Another one of my favorite moon shots that there were was taken by Apollo 15 astronauts, showing lying on the surface of the moon what appears to be, you can measure it, miles-long fuselage, spaceship. As if we were like just a regular general, and don't do any wings for a tail section, just like a cigar shape. It's just a huge thing sitting there, and it looks totally artificial.
Another video sequence Rutledge released shows what appears to be the Apollo 20 spacecraft in flight on the way to the moon, with another craft either following it or trying to rendezvous. It's unclear what precisely is going on, and Rutledge has not clarified these peculiarly shot images. But researchers say footage recorded later in the mission looks very authentic.
So there's another scene inside the lunar module, and it looks like the inside the lunar module, there's a mission patch up on the wall, so it looks like a legitimate NASA mission. All the things that you expect to see are there.
An emblem of the Russian and American flag apparently commemorates the purported joint U.S.-USSR mission, which Rutledge claimed it was. When the sequence documenting the trip down to the lunar surface begins, the focus of the mission soon comes clearly into view.
William Rutledge's Apollo 20 footage looks like any other Apollo mission landing, a lunar module descending to the surface. And we also see this structure on the moon that looks a little bit like what we saw in that picture from Apollo 15.
Take a look at how the fuselage-shaped structure captured in the official NASA photo compares with the alien-looking spaceship the Apollo 20 astronauts appeared to be hovering over before coming to a rest on the surface. The similarities and the overall connection Rutledge makes between the two make the case more convincing, according to researchers.
The idea that this Apollo 20 mission was going to recover something that had been seen in another NASA image from Apollo 15, I think gives the idea credibility into the case of that morsel of truth that you really want to latch on to and make it something that you can believe in.
But can we believe in the incredible and sometimes disturbing video sequences that come next? With over 75 million witnesses have been pouring over the past few years. After the lunar module seemingly has touched down, revealing footage shows the lunar terrain outside the vehicle where another lift, perhaps a Russian one, stands tall. Then the cameraman, perhaps Rutledge himself, pans the camera around the crowd and catches something unexpected.
The other thing that is inside this lunar module looks like a woman. There's a shot of a woman's face and there's sort of wax over her features. And this is meant to be, I believe, the alien that they recovered from the ship that was seen in the Apollo 15 picture.
Close-ups of the alien woman suggest her skin is either mummified in some way or covered with a strange glaze. Her expression seems sublime, and she was affectionately named Mona Lisa by the reported Apollo 20 crew. She is not wearing any clothing, and her exposed breasts look strikingly human. There has been much debate around the world whether a very different sequence shows the same alien or a second one entirely. There do seem to be enough physical differences to suggest two separate beings were discovered on the moon. What does the medical-looking procedure represent? Do the tubing and other implements keep this creature alive? Here, some information Rutledge released suggests this alien was not found intact. Rather, just part of her body, separate from the rest.
Well, there's a video that shows reportedly the head of this woman with her eyes being propped open by some kind of wires.
Whether it shows a whole being or not, this footage, including the strange writing depicted, has sparked much speculation about the condition she was found in and her possible ties to Earth culture mythology.
The female alien seemed to have some apparatus on her face, connecting her mouth to her eyes, to a point on her forehead where the third eye might be located. Now, I must tell you, it's interesting that this alien has a third eye, because obviously this is a sign that there may be some influence on some of the cultures, for example, the Hindus, that actually believe higher beings, or enlightened beings, literally have a third eye.
While the possibility that this alleged alien race had contact with humanity intrigues researchers, the case is considered suspicious for its unproven provenance and a variety of other reasons. Most see its authenticity basically as a black and white issue. But either way, its existence seems significant to investigators.
It just seems almost impossible to put it this sensational to leak out this way. But if it is fake, it's possible it could be part of a misinformation campaign released by NASA or other government agencies in order to further confuse the true footage, the authentic footage out there, showing these bases and structures on the moon they want to remain secret.
Tonight, we've seen this huge star that Apollo 11 captured on film, as well as 3 other potential craft, and an extraordinary ornate-looking capsule that was possibly abandoned by aliens after crash landing. Some researchers suggest ETs occupying the moon could have interacted with ancient human cultures, moving back and forth, leaving telltale signs of their influence on mankind.
When looking at clues to the nature of the UFO phenomenon, it's always intriguing when we find similarities in totally different places. For example, on the surface of the moon, on Mars, and in Egypt, even on the Earth, we find pyramid-type structures.
Amazing, the recent discovery of what appears to be an enormous artificial pyramid on the lunar surface by author Mike Barrett indicates such exquisite designs on Earth could have an alien starting point.
There is on the backside of the moon, there's what they're called Daedalus, a structure that I call the Daedalus ziggurat. It looks like an ancient Mesopotamian pyramid. You take this object and sort of wedged in front to it, a square interior, a square central temple structure with a dome on top of it, an entrance, and all these features that typical Mesopotamian ziggurats actually have.
When Barrett publicized a similarity to pyramids on Earth, he was rebuffed by the scientific community.
I was roundly attacked by different NASA backed scientists about it. They claimed that I fabricated the image.
Barrett contends NASA even altered the details of the structure in the official lunar photo archive. Take a look at the pyramid Barrett discovered. Now, look closely at how NASA or U.S. government photo technicians may have altered.
That's completely whitewashed. It doesn't look like anything except a series of craters.
But such an attempt to censor this lunar pyramid does not daunt informed researchers.
The fascinating thing is if you ignore the ziggurat, even if you say it's not there, which it is, you look around and there's all kinds of incredible stuff. It's clearly artificial.
Many experts believe the ziggurat supports the popular ancient astronaut theory that humans and aliens met in Earth's past, and this association might have included aliens helping the human race survive.
The idea that aliens come to Earth and interact with ancient man and help us build pyramids, gave us technology that got us off the Earth to avoid some catastrophe. It sounds like there's enough sort of room to science to make it believable, maybe, because we do have this technology, we do have pyramids.
Though no human ever entered the ziggurat pyramid on the moon, Mike Barrett believes Apollo 17 astronauts may have entered the structure containing alien artifacts.
There was an hexagonal mountain that they drove right up to on the second day. Spent a bunch of time looking in a V-shaped depression which is called Magic. And there are many pictures from Apollo 17 itself on the lunar surface where you can see objects that at first might look like rocks, but as you closely examine them, they look more like intelligent devices.
Precisely what the Apollo 17 astronauts found lying out on the lunar surface remains a mystery. But among the machine-like objects, which some researchers contend actually are part of the crash debris, is an appearing human-like skull. These shocking photos prove NASA knew Apollo 17 would find proof-positive evidence of alien beings. Perhaps humanoid ETs tied to ancient Earth history. Until mankind returns to the lunar surface and goes to all the specific locations where evidence of aliens on the moon exists, you'll have to decide for yourself. Between 1896 and 1897, 7 years before the Wright brothers would take flight, several cigar-shaped airship reports appeared in newspapers across the United States. One account appeared in April 19, 1897 edition of the Dallas Morning News. It was written by S.E. Hayden. The account reported that an airship crashed into the property of J.S. Proctor at 6 a.m. on the 17th. The pilot was described as not of this world and had died on the net. Debris from the crash was spread across several acres when the craft collided with Mr. Proctor's windmill. Wreckage from the craft was dumped into a nearby well, and the pilot was buried at the local Aurora Cemetery. T.J. Weems, a United States Signal Service officer from nearby Fort Worth, viewed the body and referred to the pilot as a Martian. Mr. Weems, who was also an astronomer, would become the first United States government official to observe an extraterrestrial and report back to the government. The first family of the pilot were assumed to have traveled his travels were written in an unknown hieroglyphic type script and could not be deciphered. It's likely these papers returned to Fort Worth with Mr. Weems and fell into the hands of government officials. The beginning of the UFO cover-up was at hand. The first official observation of an incident, the crashed remains of a craft, and all of the reports of airships from the previous months would cause serious concerns in Washington. How the government would handle this information would have repercussions on the entire world till present day.
Visits by little green men and flying saucers. The stuff of science fiction or drive-in theaters, maybe? Think again. In 2003, with over 400 visits by alien craft or alien creatures from British Columbia, it seems as though we're under some sort of invasion. That July, 2 women from Kelowna, British Columbia, had a visit of the terrifying kind.
My friend Linda and I were sitting at the computer late the night before she left to go back to Abbotsford. She suddenly said to me, "Why don't we go stargazing?" And I mentioned to her that it was getting quite late. It was, around midnight. I was really tired. Could we possibly think about doing this the next time she was up? But she really insisted on going.
The women got into Karina's car, and pretty soon found themselves on a back road, looking for a secluded area, shielded from the city lights. Karina was new to the area and wasn't sure where to find a good spot for stargazing. They soon found themselves on a road that runs between Kelowna and Vernon. There was no moon that night, so it was very dark. Karina stopped her car somewhere beside Kelowna's landfill. Karina pulled out a large spotlight she had in the car and pointed it down the road ahead of them. As Linda watched through her binoculars, she noticed a group of 3 stars in the shape of a triangle. She pointed them out to Karina. Neither of them could figure out what the lights could be. They both agreed on one thing. They weren't lights from a plane. There was no engine sound. The lights started to move ahead of their car, changing color from white to green. The air, which had been warm, turned musty and cold. It took a second for Karina to register what they were looking at. These weren't anything from this planet, staring back at them out of the dark. They began to move towards the 2 women. They ran back to the car as fast as they could, but it was like moving through quicksand. It was as if the whole world around them was slowing down. Karina remembers having a hard time getting her hands to open the car door. Once they were inside the car, she tried to get it started. The lights inside the car flashed on and off randomly. It was gone crazy. Karina finally got the car started and sped back towards town. As they drove along, Karina remarked to Linda that she felt weird, as if electricity had been zapped through her whole body, as if by a charge from a battery. Linda took comfort from the fact that they both felt the same way. That's when she looked at the dashboard clock. As they continued their drive home, Linda commented on the time. Linda felt they hadn't been out of their car for more than a few minutes. But according to the clock, it had been almost an hour. Linda didn't see time go. Suddenly, they both saw another large orb low in the sky on the far side of the field. Karina stopped the car. Could this be one of the same orbs they had seen before? Karina tried to convince Linda the orb was just a little flying aircraft or helicopter. Even with both windows down, neither one of them could hear any noises from the mysterious orb. He started to move further away from the vehicle. To prove her point that it was just a plane, Karina held up her spotlight out of the car window and flashed it 3 times directly at the orb. To her horror, it stopped dead in midair, then came flying down directly at her. Terrified, Karina panicked and dropped down the road. She had come home, trying to ignore the celestial object high above. The next morning, as Karina got out of bed, she discovered a large bruise on her left breast. She also felt nauseous and had severe head pressure. As she sat at her kitchen table drinking coffee, Linda joined her. Linda also complained about feeling sick, and suddenly, her right nostril started to bleed. Karina grabbed a towel and tried to stop the flow of blood. After they stopped the nosebleed, Linda left to take a shower and clean up. Karina's daughter then came down to the kitchen. She too felt nauseous and complained of a stuffed-up nose. Then, just like Linda, her nose began to gush blood from the right nostril. Karina helped her stop bleeding, and not wanting to alarm her daughter, she told her nosebleeds can happen when she feels sick. But she suspected that her encounter the previous evening hadn't ended at the front door.
It began with 2 nights of UFO sightings in 1987. Green and white balls of light that formed into all sorts of shapes hovered directly above the zoo and caused the animals to become greatly disturbed. Due to budget cuts and because there were police in the park all night long, caretakers and other zoo employees were no longer present at the zoo all night long. The last one would leave around 11 o'clock at night and show up again around 7:30 in the morning to open up the zoo for the other employees. On the morning after the 2 nights of UFO sightings in 1987, the caretaker and several other employees opened the zoo and were horrified to find every animal in the zoo dead. Not just dead, but strangely mutilated. The caretaker and other employees told me that all of the animals were still locked or secured in their pens, and exhibits with no sign of forced or key entry, so it was not like someone went and just broke in there. Although they were unable to photograph any of the animals, they said all of them looked as though they had been surgically autopsied or examined. Despite the deaths and apparent mutilation, little or no blood was present. Needless to say, the zoo was closed without explanation, and no trespassing signs were placed near the entrance and on fences surrounding it. Forest Department personnel and police were summoned. The zoo was closed, and within hours, all of the dead animal carcasses were removed. The zoo employees that spoke to me said that the animal deaths and mutilations were eventually explained away as the work of vandals or ritualistic killers in an internal report. However, they point out that the vandals would have made all kinds of noise trying to kill the animals, had to break into most of the pens and exhibits, it would have left a significant amount of blood and other evidence behind. None of these things were present.
No alarms went off, and the park police and other employees working in nearby areas on the night in question heard nothing. The only reason that the caretaker and employees contacted me with their stories was because they felt that the possibility existed that the same thing could happen again, and they found the previous explanation for the deaths and mutilations to be absolutely ridiculous.
There's many times when you tell me stories, it cracked up, and you don't want to keep your faith, not saying nothing about it, and you put up that house.
This story happened in Christian County, Kentucky, on a little farm outside of Kelly, just 8 miles north of the city of Hopkinsville.
Hopkinsville in Christian County in the mid-1950s was principally a Protestant community of blue-collar and professional workers. Community not real soundly committed to change in that way. Keep in mind also that this event occurred in the midst of August, when it was hot as the hinges of Hades. And so people tended not to get terribly excited about things when it was hot weather, they were getting hot. There was a police officer at nearby Shady Oaks Restaurant, maybe 3 miles from Kelly. And this police officer indicated that sometime just prior to the reported landing of the spacecraft at Kelly, that he saw a series, maybe 3, meteors streaking northeastwardly across the sky in the general directional pattern of Kelly. It was a Sunday night, August 21st, 1955. At about 7:30 p.m., Billy Taylor went out to the outdoor field, and while out there, observed a spaceship hovering 40 or 50 feet above the ground, and observed it land in about a 40-foot ravine or gully behind the house. Of course, concerned about it, he came on back into the house and told the members of the Sutton family that he was missing about this event, and his reputation was noted for being creative, to put it in a nice way. And so the family paid a little attention.
About 20 minutes later, Lucky looked out the window, and what he saw would haunt him for the rest of his life. Coming up towards the house from the gully were several creatures unlike anything he had ever seen before.
When members of the Sutton family first saw the creatures approaching the house, they described them as little human-like figures, 3 to 4 feet tall, with pointed ears. But the most prominent feature of their entire makeup was the large brown eyes that appeared not to blink.
A few minutes later, one of the alien creatures came right up to the window and looked in. Lucky Sutton grabbed his shotgun and fired through the window. The face disappeared. Lucky and Billy Ray, now armed as well, decided to go outside to find out what happened to the creature they shot. As Taylor stepped out onto the porch, a huge hand reached down underneath her hand, grabbed him by the neck, and tried to pull him off. Taylor managed to get free, and both he and I retreated to the house and loaded their guns with ammunition. Now the 2 men started firing at these little beings as if they were in the fight of their lives. But what happened when they fired was even more terrifying.
When the firing started, these little creatures were knocked off their feet or would do a somersault and bounce right up and float off.
Inside the house, there was absolute chaos. The women and children hid under the bed in terror, while Lucky and Billy Ray kept shooting at the advancing aliens through the walls and window screens of the house. The terrifying attack went on for hours. Each time Billy Ray or Lucky hit their mark, the creature would react by pulling away, as if they were surrounded by an invisible force field, and then would crawl back towards the house. At around 11 p.m., about 3 hours after the battle started, there was a brief respite. Without wasting a moment, Billy Ray and Lucky loaded everyone into cars and drove to the nearest police station in Hopkinsville to get help.
When the investigating officers arrived, they made a thorough search of the house. They were joined soon after by personnel from the sheriff's office and even some military personnel from nearby Fort Campbell. A thorough search was made of the house and the grounds surrounding the house, and never did they find anything in the way of evidence.
Other than bullet holes and the emotional state of the terrified family members, the investigating officers found no concrete evidence. Some reports suggest that police found a strange luminous stain in the grass where one of the creatures fell after being shot. But no one took a sample, and by morning there was no trace.
One of America's greatest comedy talents. Born in Brooklyn, New York City, I guess you would say that he was a graduate of the School of Hard Knocks. Maybe that's why he always seemed to work harder than everyone else around him. When it came time for him to get a show on TV, he wanted to own it. Unheard of in the days of early television, Gleason often had deals that provided him with huge sums of money and allowed him to produce many of his own shows. Everything Gleason did, he did with great passion. Every script for the TV shows had to be just the way he envisioned it. No one was ever allowed to step out of character. Camera shots and angles were always set up the way he wanted them. His passion also extended into his personal life. Fascinated by flying saucers and the unexplained, he ultimately assembled one of the world's greatest parapsychological libraries. The bulk of it resides today at the University of Miami Library. In 1982, I was a guest on a talk show at the Miami radio station. The subject was UFOs and the paranormal. After the show, I was handed a note by the receptionist. This often happens when I do radio guest spots, because some people prefer to share their own UFO or paranormal experiences with me off the air. I walked into my car and took a quick look at the note. It said, "Please call Mr. Gleason at," and it gave a phone number. When I arrived back in my hotel room, I called the number, asked for Mr. Gleason, and gave my name. An assistant got on the phone and informed me that Jackie Gleason wanted to speak to me if possible the next day at a Fort Lauderdale location. But he would say I accepted the invitation. The meeting location was a bar at the Jolly Roger Hotel in Fort Lauderdale. Now, I don't know if Gleason owned the hotel or merely had friends there, but after stopping by the front desk, I was escorted to a small bar that was closed to the public at that time of day. Gleason sat at the table as the king hold the court, but looked older and weaker than I had imagined he would. I wondered why Gleason hadn't met me in one of his favorite Miami bars, but it may be that he just wanted to keep a low profile. Either way, I knew that Gleason was a serious guy who hated small talk, and I wasn't about to ruffle his feathers. After a brief handshake, Gleason asked me a number of questions about my UFO and paranormal investigations. We talked for about an hour and a half. Actually, he asked questions, and I answered. He said to me, "You know, I get your newsletter," he said. "Good stuff." He was especially interested in articles that covered the topic of fresh UFOs. At that time, a lot of buzz was created by former military officers who had begun to speak out about their involvement in the cover-up of UFO crashes. Out of the blue, Gleason told me how that Richard Nixon was a good friend of his. In fact, he had supported Nixon in every possible way during his successful bid for the presidency in 1968. In 1971, Gleason's efforts were rewarded when he attended a small White House dinner in Houston. After dinner,
Gleason spoke privately with Richard Nixon. He asked the president if there was anything that Nixon could tell him about UFOs. Were they real? Were they alien spacecraft? Well, according to Gleason, Nixon told him, "Well, Jackie, if you could arrange to arrive at McGill Air Force Base in Tampa sometime over the next few days, I'll arrange to have you shown some things that may help answer some of your questions." Gleason arrived in Tampa, Florida, a day and a half later. After calling a phone number provided to him by someone on Nixon's staff, he headed out to McGill Air Force Base. After arriving on the base, he was taken to the dark-colored building that appeared to be some sort of a storage facility. Once inside, he had to pass through several levels of security. Finally, Gleason was escorted to a large room where some strange debris lay on the floor. An officer told him, "This material is from Roswell." No emotion, just a matter of fact statement. The officer handed Gleason a small piece which seemed almost weightless and very flexible. Just then, a light came on in the center part of the room. Gleason was astonished to see what looked like a large piece of a broken disc just floating a few feet above the floor. Warned not to approach it, Gleason still got an eye on it, but the surprise was going over. After just a few minutes, Gleason was escorted to another room. 3 containers, glass plates for you, figured in. These were the occupants found near the object he just sold. Again, with little emotion, the officer gave Jackie a one-sentence description of both bodies. The beings were about 4 to 5 feet tall. 2 of the bodies were badly damaged, but one was in very good shape. As Gleason looked at it, the officer said, "This one died later." It had large oval eyes, grayish skin, and looked male. "Are they all males?" Gleason asked. "Your guess is as good as ours," answered Jackie with a slight smile, but it was time to go. The experience of seeing the object and bodies affected Gleason more than he first realized.
February 24th, 1942, when a UFO strayed too close to the coastline. It was less than 3 months after the United States entered World War II as a result of the Japanese Imperial Navy's attack on Pearl Harbor, and one day after the bombardment of Edinburgh on the 23rd. Something flew over the coastline, causing the military to go on alert. Air raid sounds sounded throughout Los Angeles County at that time. A total blackout was ordered, and thousands of air raid workers were summoned to their positions. 3:16 a.m., the 37th Coast Artillery Brigade began firing 12.8 pound anti-aircraft shells into the air at a report time. Over 1,400 shells were eventually fired. Pilots of the 4th Interceptor Command were eliminated but never ordered to fly. The artillery fire continued sporadically until 4:14 a.m. To this day, no one knows for sure what they were shooting at. Maybe just stayed up that night, heard me shove a saucer shape